Chapter 2309. The demonic phoenix was going to use its killer move. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. They subconsciously wanted to take a defensive stance to deal with the upcoming killing move. Naturally, their attacks slowed down involuntarily. The demonic phoenix was going to use its killer move. This was extraordinary. A phoenix that had not appeared for millions of years. Just the thought of it was terrifying enough. Would they be able to withstand it? They had no confidence. They should prepare to defend with all their might. If they died here, then it would be too unjust. As they thought about it, the phoenix let out a long cry. Its entire body suddenly emitted white flames. Whoosh! Iluoyue was the first to retreat more than 100 meters. Her expression remained unchanged, but her heart was pounding. Humans might not be important, but as a heavenly demon, he still had many misgivings about the legendary Phoenix clan's Nirvana flame. Otherwise, he would not have come up with so many plans to kill all the Divine Beast clan. In the raging flames, the Phoenix let out a long cry, "Ancestors. Today I'm going to start a massacre." Its voice was full of melancholy. However, the feeling of being pretentious was even more intense. Everyone's heart beat even more inexplicably with fear. They all increased their vigilance once again, trying their best to increase their defensive power from the previous 100% to the limit of 120%. They also displayed all their secret defensive techniques, intending to resist the upcoming world-destroying attack. Then they saw a red light flash. The timid ones couldn't help but let out a scream or a cry of surprise. Everyone rubbed their eyes at the same time. What was going on? Was this the prelude to the world-ending attack? He saw that the phoenix had actually made a feint, and those two huge wings were gathered on its back. Like an arrow, it shot out at an extremely fast speed. With its butt facing backwards, it looked like it was about to disappear from his sight. This guy was bragging so much, scaring everyone into a daze. Then he actually ran away. And it ran so fast. While everyone was dumbfounded, he had already disappeared without a trace like a wisp of smoke. What the fuck was going on? Everyone, including the heavens and the earth, all stared at it with their eyes wide open. Millions of people had the same feeling. Then everyone only thought of one word: fuck. Fuck. Millions of people blurted out. This holy shit was truly world-shaking. Since ancient times, no one had ever been able to say these two words in such a majestic and mighty manner. Moreover, it was able to shake mountains and uproot high peaks, causing sand and stones to fly. It was probably the first time that someone had ever said these two words in such a majestic manner. But this time it was unprecedented. There was still such a divine beast existing between heaven and earth. Those experts who had circulated their yuan qi and used all sorts of methods to defend themselves were all dumbfounded. They didn't know how to react. Two of them who had forcefully raised their yuan qi to the limit and used secret methods to save their lives, spat out a large mouthful of blood because of the sudden change in front of them. The lethality of this attack seemed to be really great. On the ground, Xie Dan Xiong, who knew the inside story, covered his face in extreme pain. This is so embarrassing. This is so fucking embarrassing. Brother, I wanted you to intimidate others, not to embarrass yourself. Now this was just great. Xie Dan Xiong immediately raised his head with a straight face. There wasn't the slightest trace of panic. That's right. As long as I don't expose that Rui Butong is that phoenix, then everything will be fine. While others don't know, I must keep this matter strictly confidential. That phoenix and I, cough cough. I don't know him at all. Who is that phoenix? I don't know him. I don't know. That's right. We don't have any relationship at all. Xie Dan Xiong solemnly looked around and said, cough cough. Everyone heard it just now. Even Lord Phoenix said that Yuan Tianji is a demonic demon. He started the war to collect the Yuan spirits of our race's experts and strengthen himself. That's it. Everyone nodded like chickens pecking rice. Why do I feel that Xie Dan Xiong's words are lacking in confidence? Shouldn't he be full of confidence? Misconception. It must be a misconception. That Lord Phoenix just now should be a little phoenix that has just stepped into the world. His strength is naturally lacking. And slightly lacking. Thinking about it, Xie Dan Xiong still felt that something was wrong. He swallowed his saliva and added such an explanation. Yes, Xie Dan Xiong. A guy said seriously, it's definitely a little phoenix that hasn't reached adulthood yet. He was besieged by so many people. Can't he just run if he can't win? Just now when he spread his wings and flew high, I paid special attention to the phoenix's lower body. I saw that. That's right, that's a male phoenix. A male phoenix. And it's indeed not fully developed yet. I really saw it. It's really not fully developed yet. The corner of Xie Danxiong's mouth finally couldn't help but twitch. Then it twitched again. Then his entire face twitched. He almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. He turned his head and glared fiercely at this officer. Fortunately, his eyes were fierce, so he didn't burst out laughing. "This guy, what's wrong with you? Why do you have to pay attention to that part? And you can observe it in detail and comment on it? It's fine if you don't know about it. Why do you have to publicize it? Bastard. And that damned Rue Butong, he's a complete idiot. You said that you transformed into a phoenix and spread your wings. It's indeed very mighty. But who would have thought that when you were mighty and beautiful, your lower body would be exposed? I'm going crazy. Even if I'm not crazy, I'm going to vomit blood." Xie Danxiong returned to the big tent. He fiercely picked up the water sack and gulped down the water in it. Then he wiped his mouth. Then he unwillingly and ferociously blurted out some vulgar words. His handsome face was tangled to the extreme at this moment. The guard in front of the door looked down and stood there majestically. He didn't move, but his heart was filled with endless shock. Chief Xie didn't seem to have said a single vulgar word even when he was facing a desperate situation 2 days ago. He always had a graceful and elegant demeanor. But I don't know what happened these 2 days. He's very different from his usual self. Not only can he call himself, even those words like fuck and fuck are easy to say. It's as if it's going to develop into a catchphrase. What's going on here? What's the special reason for Chief Xie to have such a huge change? Puzzling. Pondering. Deep in the night, Rue Butong returned to Xie Danxiong's independent tent in dejection. He was caught and beaten on the spot by Xie Danxiong. Rue Butong screamed miserably. He knew that he was in the wrong. He didn't even struggle, let alone fight back. He just took the beating silently. For a moment, the big tent was filled with sounds of violent beating. There was also a kind of extremely angry and tangled cursing that couldn't be suppressed. "Stupid bird. Stupid bird, stupid bird. You're a fucking stupid bird. I knew you were stupid before, but I didn't expect you to be stupid to this extent. Why did I think of asking you to take action? I'm simply blind. Following you, stupid bird, I'm going to become stupid because of you. Tell me, do you think you're still useful?" The eyebrows of the guards standing outside twitched. They kept quiet out of fear. Listening to this voice, feeling that power. Damn it. Without exception, all the guards broke out in cold sweat. If this kind of power hit me, I'm afraid I would have been turned into minced meat. The one inside doesn't look tall and his figure is thin, but he can actually take it so well. Damn it, that guy can really take a beating. The next day the battle continued. The two brothers, Rue Butong and Xie Danxiong, personally came to the scene to supervise the battle. Rue Butong was dressed in black. His face was cold and solemn. He didn't say a word, just like a real peak expert. He stood with his hands behind his back, watching coldly from the sidelines. He was really awe-inspiring, showing off the demeanor of an expert. No one would have thought that this seemingly high and mighty super-expert was actually the mythical beast phoenix that was crazily fleeing with its butt facing the sky and its lower body naked yesterday. Just as the battle was getting intense, suddenly, a huge flying boat appeared in the sky. It flew straight towards this side. The people on both sides who didn't participate in the battle were all surprised. Which force is this? Are they helping us or are they helping the other side? The flying boat was getting closer and closer. The destination gradually became clear. It was slowly flying towards the center of Yuan Tianjie's camp. It was already about to land. An officer under Yu Qi's command couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Could it be that our reinforcements have arrived? Someone stepped forward and asked, "Who are you? Please state your identity quickly. Otherwise you will be destroyed." On the flying boat, a steady voice said, "We are the reinforcements from the rear. We are here to support His Majesty the Sky Emperor in eliminating the rebels. Take out the relevant token." The token. Someone shouted. He was obviously a meticulous person. If you say you are reinforcements, then you are reinforcements. What if the enemy is pretending to be you? The person on the flying boat said indifferently, "We naturally have proof of our identity, but it is inconvenient to present it now. We will present it immediately after we land." Seeing that the flying boat had already arrived above the camp and was preparing to land, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The other party was obviously planning to land in the center of the camp. If it was the enemy, wouldn't they be surrounded on the spot and destroyed instantly? There didn't seem to be such a stupid enemy. Since it wasn't the enemy, then it should be one of them. Even Yuan Tianjie in the tent was a little suspicious. He had several question marks in his heart. Where did these reinforcements come from? On the battlefield, Yi Luiyue frowned and thought, could it be that the order was given to those super sects back then, and now they are here to help? Since Yuan Tianjie Yi Luiyue and Yu Qi didn't stop them, the relevant generals immediately ordered the troops in the center to retreat to make enough space for the flying boat to land. Just as they were busy preparing, the flying boat suddenly accelerated its speed of descent. Chapter 23:10. Everyone below exclaimed, "What's going on? Fuck. What's wrong with you? Motherfucker. Quickly adjust the speed of descent." Ah, fuck. Everyone run. The flying boat descended with the force of a thunderbolt. To be more precise, it smashed down. At the same time, 10 round holes suddenly appeared on the flying boat. Then something that couldn't be seen clearly popped out from inside the boat. It flew in the sky with a whooshing sound, and its landing point was uncertain. Everyone below could see that it was a very strange chair after it flew for some distance. The front part was pointed and the back part was forked. It was grotesquely shaped. There was a person sitting on each chair, and they were rushing forward like meteors as the chairs shot out. They had already covered a distance of 3,000 feet in the blink of an eye. They were rushing towards Xie Danxiong's camp like moths to a flame. What's going on? What's going on? Everyone's mind went blank. Isn't this situation too strange? It doesn't make any sense. Then the momentum of the chairs gradually weakened. The 10 people on them suddenly stood up at the same time. They kicked the chairs with their feet. Apparently, they were using all their strength to continue flying towards Xie Danxiong's camp. These people had already covered a distance of 2,000 feet. So they weren't far from the battlefield. These 10 people were obviously first-class experts. So they had crossed the entire battlefield in the blink of an eye, and had landed in Xie Danxiong's camp without anyone noticing. They had descended from the sky. The person in the lead was dressed in snow-white clothes. His face was gentle and elegant. He was tall and handsome. He looked very confident and at ease. Especially that kind of steady and heroic bearing, it was as if the entire world was already in his grasp. He was extremely confident and it really made people admire him. Xie Danxiong was shocked to see this unforeseen event. He was so shocked that he didn't know what to say. He stood there and his whole body trembled. Hot tears almost gushed out of his eyes. That white-clothed man slowly walked out of the smoke and dust as he looked at the excited Xie Danxiong. He smiled gently, "Xie Danxiong, I'm here." Xie Danxiong's voice was trembling. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Mo Tianji, is it really you?" A look of excitement also flashed across Mo Tianji's face. But he forcibly suppressed this excitement. Then he smiled and said, "Brother, you're fighting tirelessly. So how can I, Mo Tianji, not help you? Since it's my first time here, I don't have any good gifts to give you. I might as well give you a fireworks show. Enjoy it." As he spoke, he clapped his hands lightly. 50,000 zhang away, the airboat that was descending in the center of Yuan Tianjie's camp suddenly accelerated again. Boom. Without any hesitation, he smashed it onto the ground. The weight of this flying boat was more than 1,000,000 jin. Not to mention the fact that Mo Tianji had put other things in it. Smashing down like this, the sound it caused was enough to shake the mountains and the earth, causing the sky to collapse and the earth to crack. The soldiers of Yuan Tianjie's camp near the place where the airboat fell were all shaken by this unusually powerful shock wave. They were sent flying in all directions. Some of the people who were close to the airboat bled from their 7 apertures on the spot. Many of the people with weaker cultivations were directly shaken to death on the spot. Even Xie Danxiong had clearly felt a strong tremor under his feet. Moreover, this sudden change had caught him off guard. Many large stones that weighed hundreds of jin in the vicinity also jumped up. It could be seen that the shock this time was very violent. However, Xie Danxiong was somewhat puzzled. Could it be that Mo Tianji had racked his brains to do this just to smash a few people to death? That would be a huge waste of an expensive airboat. Such a waste wouldn't be very effective. Looking at Xie Danxiong's doubtful eyes, Mo Tianji smiled faintly. He raised his eyebrows. Then he slowly used 2 fingers to cover his ears. Then he softly laughed and said, "The fireworks show is about to begin." Boom. Xie Danxiong's complexion changed. He roared, "Everyone cover your ears. Get on the ground." Xie Danxiong's voice hadn't faded away. The soldiers didn't seem to have reacted. Then they heard a truly earth-shattering sound. Boom! That airboat suddenly emitted a blazing white light. Then it exploded. At this moment, the world also lost its color because of this explosion. The world changed color. The sky was filled with human bodies and countless severed limbs. Many of them were turned into ashes and shattered into pieces halfway through their flight. An unprecedentedly huge mushroom cloud rose into the sky. It rose in spirals and rolled up. It became bigger and bigger. Eventually, it engulfed the entire horizon. Xie Danxiong's cultivation was exquisite. But he still felt a burst of violent tremors even though they were so far apart. His heart was beating rapidly and his feet were off the ground. Then he couldn't hear anything. Finally, he sat down on the ground without any dignity. The two main camps of the two armies, 10% of the tents had collapsed from the force of the tremors. Nearby, more than 30 mountains collapsed at the same time. Rubble pierced through the clouds. Countless crushed stones flew into the sky. Yuan Tianjia's camp, which stretched for thousands of miles, became devastated after this explosion. It was too horrible to look at. 1/3 of the enemy's camp was directly destroyed by this explosion. A total of 2 million people were blown to smithereens by this massive explosion. Those who were lucky enough to survive didn't exceed half of the total. And these were those who were further away. Such a huge explosion happened without any warning in a densely populated military camp. It would be strange if they were fine. After a while, the aftermath of the explosion gradually subsided. But this moment was so miserable that even Xie Danxiong couldn't bear to watch anymore. This explosion was really too ruthless. Iluoyue, who was in midair, was relatively close to the explosion. At this moment, she had already been sent flying to God knows where by the aftermath of the explosion. As for Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun Yuan Tianjie, he was at the center of the explosion. Even with his profound strength, he really didn't know what would happen to him. Mu Tsonglan was also lying on the ground because of this unprecedented explosion. His intuition was like thunder in his ears. He was also considered unlucky. He was at the forefront of the battle. He was at the front and was directly affected by the aftermath of the explosion. Caught off guard, he fell from the sky like hailstones and almost paralyzed half of his body. Fortunately, his strength was profound and he didn't really paralyze half of his body. However, it was inevitable that he would temporarily lose his hearing. Gritting his teeth and crawling up, he saw that everyone around him was shouting something with their mouths wide open. But his ears were buzzing and he couldn't hear anything. He couldn't help but shout, "What's going on? Who can tell me what's going on? What's going on?" But when he said it, he realized that even the words he said seemed to be. He actually couldn't hear a single word. Within thousands of miles, everyone was covering their ears and cursing loudly. However, everyone only felt that the world was silent and they couldn't hear anything. There was only some buzzing noise in their ears. Xie Danxiong's situation was better. He had already barely recovered. He crawled up from the ground and asked with a twisted face, "I say, what's going on?" Mo Tianji's white robe fluttered and he smiled gently, "It's not a big deal. All flying boats have a self-destruct function. It's just that I slightly improved it." "How did you slightly improve it? Did you really just slightly improve it?" Xie Danxiong gritted his teeth. "Actually, it can't even be considered as improving it. I just added 7 million kilograms of explosives. That's all. Yes, I also added some poison and poisonous smoke. It's not a big deal." Mo Tianji said casually, "This is my first gift to you. This fireworks show is pretty good, right? 7 million kilograms of explosives. Fireworks show." Xie Danxiong opened his mouth wide. He felt as if his heart had been crushed by these words. Xie Danxiong suddenly felt powerless as he looked at Mo Tianji's casual and careless manner. What is a ruthless person? What is a poisonous person? Have you seen it? If anyone dares to say that I'm ruthless, I'll risk my life with them. You can't compare people with people. Compared to Mo Tianji, I'm just a pure and kind-hearted young man. The experts around Xie Danxiong had recovered their sense of hearing. So they naturally heard Mo Tianji's words. Their mouths were wide open as they foolishly looked at this elegant and handsome young man in front of them. They felt as if millions of alpacas were galloping in their hearts, and were trampling them back and forth. Fuck. The generals didn't have any other thoughts apart from these 3 words. They didn't have any other thoughts. What kind of monster was this young man who looked so handsome and elegant, who exuded gentleness and sincerity from head to toe? The aftermath of the explosion gradually disappeared. The world was still shaking, but it was no longer enough to cause any harm to the experts. Mo Tianji smiled. "What's wrong, Xie Danxiong? I've given you such a big gift. Aren't you going to invite me in?" Xie Danxiong woke up from his stupefied state like a dumb goose. He repeatedly said, "Oh, oh, oh." Then he came back to his senses. He opened his eyes wide and cursed loudly, "Motherfucker. Emotianji, you should have told me in advance that you were going to do this, right? Now, where the fuck do you want me to invite you in?" Xie Danqiong's commander's tent wasn't lucky enough to survive the explosion. It had already turned into ruins. Emotianji chuckled. He had an apologetic look on his face as he said, "I didn't think of this. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Chapter 23:11. Looking at Emotianji, it was clear that he was completely complacent and high-spirited. Xie Danqiong became even angrier when he saw this. With Emotianji's intelligence, how could he not have thought of this? However, he still chose to do this. Presumably, his caution had come into play. He was afraid that Xie Danqiong would leak the information. Moreover, you've only lost a few tents at best. You haven't suffered any casualties. Emotianji's robe fluttered in the wind. He confidently walked forward and casually said, "You've maintained your fighting strength quite well." Ah. Black lines appeared on Xie Danqiong's face. "You made such an explosion. Aren't you afraid of offending the heavens?" Emotianji smiled gently and elegantly. "So, I'm already prepared to do good deeds." Xie Danqiong was speechless. He turned his head and turned his face to one side. "The most optimistic and conservative estimate of your explosion just now is that it would kill at least a few million people. How many good deeds do you have to do to make up for it? It's a waste of saliva to talk to this guy. Especially when I see his harmless face. It makes me want to ruthlessly kick his handsome face. However, I don't have the time to do that now. So, I hurriedly ordered them to set up camp." At this time, the landslide on the surrounding mountains was still ongoing. It was still rumbling and shaking the mountains and the earth. All the soldiers under Xie Danqiong's command looked at Emotianji with reverence as they set up camp. Everyone had the same thought in their hearts: don't offend this person. We won't be far from destruction if we offend him. I don't know how Chief Xie dares to talk to that person so presumptuously. Isn't he afraid? Sure enough, an expert's way of doing things is unfathomable. Motherfucker, everyone says that the extraterrestrial demons are so. Now, it seems that the extraterrestrial demons aren't even qualified to carry the shoes of this gentle and harmless duke. This person is too ruthless. He just came here and millions of lives have become a rainbow to welcome him. It's better to have less contact with such a ruthless person. It's best to stay away from him. Fortunately, he's Chief Xie's brother. Who would dare to provoke such a person? At this moment, an angry voice mixed with infinite grievance and grief roared, "Fuck you, Emotianji. You bastard son of a bitch, you bastard, you still dare to come. See if I don't beat you to death, you bastard. Just you wait." It was Rue Butong who was cursing without a care in the world. Among the brothers, Rue Butong was undoubtedly the most miserable one who was plotted against and hunted down. At best, the other brothers would die, but there would always be a way out. Only Rue Butong was completely dead. No matter how he walked, there would always be a dead end in front of him. Because of Emotianji's accurate information, Rue Butong had already been beaten into meat paste countless times. It would be strange if her eyes didn't turn red when she saw Emotianji at this moment. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. Naturally, they clenched their fists and rushed forward without a care. When the surrounding soldiers saw this, it was an eye-opener. Oh my God, there really was someone who wasn't afraid of death. He actually dared to clamor in front of everyone. Wasn't this a little too daring? It seems like he's an acquaintance. Emotianji was smiling and talking to Xie Danqiong. But he suddenly heard this loud curse. So he raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh, so there's a stupid bird here. Guards, take this person down and beat him to death. It doesn't matter if he's beaten to death. Count it all on me." Hearing this, the experts that Emotianji had brought with him rushed forward without a word, and used all their strength to besiege this bird. Emotianji and Xie Danqiong chatted and laughed as they talked about the world. On the other hand, Rue Butong had fallen into a perilous siege. It was really dangerous at every step. How could the people that Emotianji had brought to participate in the war be ordinary? Almost everyone had a high cultivation level that was not inferior to Rue Butong's. Moreover, they besieged one person. Soon, Rue Butong was pressed to the ground and beaten crazily. Of course, they wouldn't go so far as to beat him to death. However, they could still beat him half to death. This was exactly what they were doing. On the side, the generals were puzzled. Emotianji and Xie Danqiong were chatting and laughing. They actually didn't care about this matter at all. They just let Rui Butong be beaten into a meat patty. This was too cruel. Could it be that this guy wasn't their brother? This was too strange. Even if they weren't brothers, this was a little too much, right? Let's not talk about the new ruthless person. Our chief Xie wasn't the kind of person who would take someone's life. What was going on? Rui Butong was pressed to the ground by several people. His mouth was almost pressed into the soil. He was still shouting loudly, "Emotianji, you fucking wait. When the boss comes, I swear I won't be human if I don't beat you into a flying chicken. If I don't chop you into pieces and cook you, I won't be called Rui Butong. Fucking, you're still beating me? You. I'll remember you. I'll tell you. I'll remember you. Save me." The barracks were finally set up. Mu Tsonglan had also rushed back from the front line. After such an explosion, both sides didn't have the mood to continue fighting. It seemed like both sides were temporarily not in the mood. Mu Tsonglan looked at Mo Tianji as if he was looking at a monster. There was deep fear and apprehension in his eyes. This was a madman. Mu Tsonglan thought to himself. Not long after, Rui Butong was dragged in like a dead dog and thrown on a chair. The pitiful phoenix was beaten into a chicken this time. His originally skinny figure had actually become fatter, swollen. Hearing Mo Tianji talk about this, Xie Danxiong's eyes widened. In the end, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It wasn't just him. Even Mu Tsonglan, a million-year-old senior and the commander of the entire Mo Yuntian army who had experienced countless big scenes, had the same reaction as Xie Danxiong. Even Rui Butong, who was beaten until he was dizzy, didn't curse at this time. His entire person was in a daze. The faces of the people Mo Tianji brought were all green. Their faces were filled with lingering fear. It was obvious that they were overly frightened. "You're saying that you brought along 7 million gene of explosives and stuffed them into your own flying boat? And flew a long distance of 170,000 li to come here?" Xie Danxiong's complexion turned deathly pale as he said those words. He was on the verge of collapsing. The faces of the people Mo Tianji brought revealed a kind of, "I've survived a disaster. I can't bear to look back." All the dangers along the way were enough to make one go crazy from fright. Mo Tianji nodded as if it was a matter of course. "Yes, what's wrong? Isn't this a matter of course? Without my arrival, would there be such a beautiful fireworks show?" I'm going crazy. Xie Danxiong grabbed his hair. He gritted his teeth as he looked at Mo Tianji. "How come I didn't see it? Here." At the side, Mu Tsonglan's hair stood up as he listened. Carrying 7 million caddies of explosives, flying at high altitudes for a total of 170,000 li. Mu Tsonglan didn't know about others, but he definitely wouldn't dare to ride such a flying boat. He wasn't fucking crazy. He was having a stroke, and it was a huge stroke. Even if they were very careful, as long as there was a slight collision between them, there would be no need to talk about exploding the heavens. Perhaps Mo Tianji and the other 10 people would have already turned into incomparably brilliant fireworks in the sky before they could even reach this place. In such a place of explosion, even Rui Butong with his phoenix physique would definitely be turned into ashes. There was no luck. Cough. Mo Tianji coughed and casually waved his fan. "Before we came, I did a divination for myself. The divination showed that this trip was daunting but not dangerous. Do you know what this means? In fact, the conclusion was that nothing was wrong. Therefore we came here without a hitch." Everyone's head was dripping with sweat. "Fuck your sister. You did a divination for such a big matter. Who do you think you are? What about you guys? Did you guys just let him do it? He's crazy. Are you guys crazy too? Are you playing with your lives?" Xie Danxiong's face darkened as he asked Mo Tianji. One of them smiled bitterly. "How can we change Lord Tianji's decision? As for this trip, I really can't bear to look back on the past. My hair turned gray early." One of them had a face full of fear. It seemed like everyone's hair was hiding a few strands of gray hair. Wasn't that the case? Along the way they just sat in the cracks between the explosives. Their bodies were like zombies. They didn't dare to move at all. A whole 7 days. A whole 7 days. They didn't even dare to blink. They were afraid that they would accidentally trigger the explosives and turn into beautiful fireworks. Experts of this level were so scared that they needed to pee. However, they didn't dare to go to the toilet. They held it in all the way. They didn't go crazy from holding it in. How could outsiders understand this feeling? Just having a few strands of gray hair was already a very lucky thing. When they heard Xie Danxiong's question, all of them had a bitter look on their faces. Motherfucker. This is the most dangerous trip of my life. Compared to this trip in the sky, all the life and death battles in Jianghu in the past were disdainful. What desperate situation. What powerful enemies. They couldn't even be compared to this. Finally, after coming here, I saw the result of the bitter journey. I also ruthlessly flattened a meat target. The depression in my heart was vented a lot. I felt much more comfortable and refreshed. Chapter 23:12. All the generals in the tent nodded in agreement. Other than these two words, there really wasn't any other words that could accurately describe the actions of this gentle and elegant Duke Gue. Really fucking strange there was actually such a complete outlaw in this world. A general stood up abruptly and hurriedly walked out. Where are you going? Mu Tsonglan was extremely displeased. Didn't you see that there was an esteemed guest here? How could you be so immature? You're really embarrassing me. That general turned around with a green face. General, please allow me to report I'm going to the latrine. Although I was only listening just now, I also felt the urge to pee. It really scared me to death. I'm covered in sweat. Who would have thought that once these words came out, there would actually be many people who agreed. All the generals who usually boasted that they were extremely daring all stood up with bitter faces. I'm also going to the latrine, I also need to pee. This is really humiliating. Mu Tsonglan stood up angrily. I'll go to the latrine and catch all of them back. They haven't even gone yet, what are you going to catch? It was very obvious that General Mu was also scared to the point of peeing. However, he was experienced and had his own countermeasures. And those countermeasures were quite reasonable. Not to mention Xie Danxiong's side, let's turn around and talk about Yuan Tianjie's side. After the explosion, that kind of tragic scene was really too horrible to look at. Even the most cold-hearted person in the world would shed tears of sympathy if they saw this scene. The so-called end of the world was probably nothing more than this. It might not even be comparable to the desolation in front of them. The military camp that bore the brunt of the direct impact was swept clean, and an unusually vast lake was created. The lake water rippled and sparkled. However, there were countless strange things floating on the surface of the water. The entire lake was red, blood red. There was still a stretch of thousands of feet by the side of the lake that was filled with minced meat that couldn't be any smaller. As for the places further away, countless broken human heads were blown by the wind, spinning on the ground. There was complete silence. Under such a huge explosion, even their cries were forcefully suppressed. The surviving soldiers stared blankly at the scene in front of them. This barren land, this wasteland, this boundless lake. Is this the military camp that we were fighting and defending with our lives just a moment ago? All the remaining soldiers were in a daze, and they seemed like children that had lost their mothers. Their miserable state simply caused one to shed tears upon hearing it and feel sad upon seeing it. In the distance, a human figure flew back with a whoosh. His entire body was shrouded in thick black smoke. He shouted loudly like thunder, "Who did this? Who did it? Who the hell did it? I'm going to tear him to shreds." The person who came was actually Heavenly Emperor Ink Cloud Yuan Tianjie. But at this moment, His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor did not have the slightest bit of his usual majesty and demeanor. His entire body was tattered and his face was completely black. One of his shoulders had been blown off. Fortunately, it was already recovering quickly. But that sorry state was still obvious and could not be concealed. In that explosion just now, although Yuan Tianjie had an exceedingly high cultivation, he was still in the center position after all. He had to bear the most direct impact and was completely defenseless. If not for his fast reaction, he would have been completely annihilated in this explosion. If he was really killed by the explosion, Yuan Tianjie would probably really become a legend, an unparalleled legend. The first heavenly emperor to be killed by an explosion in the history of the world. And the first heavenly demon king to be killed by an explosion in the history of the world. That would truly be too sullen of a death. Facing Yuan Tianjie's question, no one was able to answer. The wind in the sky whistled as if weeping and complaining. In the distance, the landslide was still ongoing, and the rumbling sounds were endless. "Your Majesty." Yu Qi appeared in Yuan Tianjie's field of vision, covered in wounds. The moment she appeared, she started bawling. "Your Majesty, oh, too miserable. Our situation is really too miserable. This bunch of goddamn demons. Too miserable." Yuan Tianjie's eyes widened. He was already in a bad mood to begin with. Now that a wailing person suddenly popped out, his mood naturally became even worse. However, when he saw Yuchi's current pitiful state and how her entire body was practically shattered, he couldn't bring himself to scold her. He let out a long sigh and said, "Hurry up and organize the army." Yuchi replied while sobbing, then immediately turned around and left. In the distance, Prime Minister Iluiwe also flew back in a sorry state. Before she could say anything, she started coughing. Every time she coughed, thick black smoke would come out of her mouth. With this explosion, the Prime Minister's situation was also extremely miserable. She was speechless facing Yuan Tianjie. They really did not expect that in such an intense battlefield, such a super ruthless person would appear out of thin air. He directly used the largest and most powerful flying ship in the Heaven Palace, piled with explosives, and flew over tens of thousands of miles, directly smashing it on the army's head. What kind of motherfucking bastard can come up with such an idea? Fuck your mother. Iluiwe cursed. This is simply inhumane and deranged. To be able to make an extraterrestrial demon curse him with words like inhumane and deranged, Mo Tianji was really proud. Yuan Tianjie did not say a word. The murderous aura around his body was almost fully formed. He swore to himself that if he caught the culprit behind today's calamity, if he let him die a quick death, then he would have let down the 8 generations of heavenly devil ancestors. In Xie Danxiong's tent, everyone looked at Rui Butong in surprise. This guy who was almost beaten into a meat patty just now was definitely not an adjective. He was really like a meat patty. In just a moment, all the wounds on his body disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Slowly, the bruises all over his body disappeared. His face also gradually returned to normal and he became lively again. This guy's recovery speed was even faster than Mu Tsanglan, a peak saint expert. What kind of monster was this? It was like a phoenix going through nirvana, rising from the ashes. This was probably nothing more than this, right? Everyone looked at Xie Danxiong, then looked at Mo Tianji, then looked at Rui Butong. They all had the same feeling in their hearts. Chief Xie's brothers, all seemed to be monsters. Although their paths were all unusual, they were definitely monsters. There was no doubt about this. Done? Mo Tianji asked Rui Butong kindly. Rui Butong nodded desperately. Do you still want to take revenge on me? I can give you a chance. Mo Tianji asked gently, full of modesty. Chapter 23:13. He was really scared to death. Ever since he heard that Mo Tianji had traveled thousands of miles with millions of kilograms of explosives, Rui Butong only felt a cold wind blowing at the back of his head. He was so scared that his legs almost turned to jelly. As for the thought of dealing with Mo Tianji, it was like snow melting under the scorching sun. There was nothing left. That's a good boy. You know when to advance and when to retreat. Mo Tianji laughed loudly. He was in high spirits and full of confidence. This strategy of his was quite effective. Dealing with Yuan Tianji was one of the main reasons. On the other hand, it was also very effective. Of course, Gudu Xing and the others have also been hunted down by me. When they come, you can contact them. Mo Tianji suggested, I don't mind if they join forces to beat me up. I really don't mind. This is nothing to me. Rui Butong was just thinking about this idea. Hearing this, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. You said you? Mo Tianji smiled very warmly. When the time comes, I may join forces with them to deal with you. But I don't know, do you want to offend me? Or do you want to offend me? What do you think they will choose? Xie Danxiong laughed loudly. Faced with such a choice, the brothers probably wouldn't choose to help Rui Butong. That's because the most frightening person among our brothers is this master of calculation and manipulation, Mo Tianji, before us. In terms of terror, even Big Brother Chuyang was inferior to Mo Tianji. Sitting in the commander's tent, Mo Tianji was carefully listening to Xie Danxiong's explanation of the current situation and his own situation. During this period of time, Xie Danxiong's side was in a bleak situation, whether it was in terms of overall strength or public opinion. Mu Tsanglan himself was almost cursed to the point of his ancestors. In fact, it wasn't just his ancestors. It was as if his ancestors were unlucky. If his ancestors knew, even if they knew that Mu Tsanglan was innocent, they would still visit him in his dreams to teach him a lesson. Faced with this matter, Xie Danxiong was at his wit's end. He couldn't deal with it. At this moment, Mo Tianji had arrived. With the arrival of this cunning ancestor, this difficult problem was naturally handed over to him to deal with. It's only been 10 days, how did we end up in such a terrible state? Mo Tianji frowned. He had been traveling at high speed on the way here. It was difficult for him not to receive news from the flying boat. His current news was still from 10 days ago. 10 days ago, Xie Danxiong's side had been singing a triumphant song. Tens of millions of soldiers had raised their banners to attack the devils. How majestic was the army's appearance. However, it had been destroyed in a short span of 10 days. In fact, less than 30% of the army's strength had been left at its peak. The most important thing was that the morale of the soldiers was seriously lacking. The general's fighting spirit wasn't at its peak either. However, they had been forcibly destroyed by external forces. So this army might collapse at any time once that momentum dissipated. He had never thought that Xie Danxiong would end up in such a difficult situation. Moreover, it had happened in such a short period of time. On your side, you raised the flag to exterminate the demons. You exterminated the heavenly demons and evildoers who infiltrated the heavenly imperial court. You clearly stood on the moral high ground. Now, you have been forced into such a miserable situation. It's really... Mo Tianji sighed deeply. It was difficult to conceal his disdain. Mu Tsanglan's old face also turned the color of pig liver. These words were too much of a slap to the face. Well, leave this matter to me. Mo Tianji thought for a while. Then he immediately said. His tone was full of confidence. What do you want to do? Xie Danxiong's eyes lit up. Haha, have you ever heard of the saying, when things reach an extreme they will move in the opposite direction? Mo Tianji asked. After he finished speaking, he chuckled and went to rest. Mu Tsanglan looked at Mo Tianji's departing figure with a belly full of suspicion. Now that we have reached this point, the war might collapse at any time. What other methods does he have to turn the situation around? If there is one person in this world who can turn the situation around, then it must be him. Xie Danxiong said confidently, don't worry. Mo Tianji can definitely do it. When it comes to playing mind games, even my big brother Chuyang is not his opponent. He is a peerless, sly person. Xie Danxiong didn't know whether to praise or criticize him. He had a look of relief on his face. Mu Tsanglan's eyes were full of suspicion. After Mo Tianji looked through all the information, he immediately took action. The first step is to stir up public opinion. Continue to scold Mu Tsanglan. Scold him as exaggeratedly and as viciously as possible. The more exaggerated and viciously scolded, the better. The Tianji Intelligence Department quickly spread this order. Mo Tianji's orders were the only way to go in the Tianji Intelligence Department. Any order would be carried out with 100% accuracy. There was absolutely no room for error. Therefore, in an instant, all the various departments of the Tianji Intelligence Department and Mo Yintian received this news. After a while, a wave of condemnation towards Mu Tsanglan spread out in an unprecedentedly grand manner. Mu Tsanglan is a despicable and shameless person. He has no talent and no virtue. He has been in a high position for many years. Now he is plotting a rebellion. He wants to be the emperor himself. Mu Tsanglan once occupied hundreds of thousands of beautiful ladies for his own selfish desires. He is a beast among beasts. Mu Tsanglan, in order to repair his ancestral grave, forcefully moved 8 million people. He occupied hundreds of thousands of acres of land. He caused countless families to become homeless and their wives to be separated. That year, in order to occupy a lady, Mu Tsanglan forced the death of an entire family. His despicable actions are simply outrageous. In order to gain the favor of a handsome guy, Mu Tsanglan did not hesitate to kill hundreds of people just to make the handsome guy smile. Mu Tsanglan's 1,000 crimes are as follows. Mu Tsanglan originally only had the title of a rebel. Now, in just a day's time, he had transformed into an evil, unpardonable, insane, and inhumane supervillain. When the masses who did not know the truth saw so many truths, they were naturally filled with righteous indignation and scolded him. It turned out that the person who wanted to steal the throne had so many despicable actions. Then his previous actions were reasonable. Everyone must have scolded him. It would be wrong not to scold him. How could a despicable person like Mu Tsanglan still have the face to live in this world? Anyway, in the hearts of the masses he was already dead. A day later, Mu Tsanglan received the latest news. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He immediately went to find Xie Danxiong. This is how he cleared my name. I really, after saying I really 7 or 8 times, his face turned red. Finally he scolded, fuck. Xie Danxiong grimaced and held his forehead. This is a strategy. Let's wait and see. Mu Tsanglan left the tent in anger. In the next few days, as he fought, he heard the curses outside escalate. Mu Tsanglan wantonly killed his own people. Every year, tens of millions of Tianke people die in his hands. In fact, Mu Lan's previous battles were all for personal gain. Otherwise, with his character and actions, how could he obtain the position of number one in Mo Yuntian's military? Yes, how could he rebel without building up his prestige? At the beginning of the rebellion, how could he gather so many people? Mu Lan's intentions are extremely vicious. He has been plotting this for millions of years. His intentions are truly unforgivable. Heaven and earth will not tolerate it. Mu Lan previously dismissed all the subordinates who were not loyal to him. He pretended to be benevolent and righteous, saying that everyone has their own ambitions. But after they left, he started to kill them. His atrocities are truly the rage of the heavens and the people. Mu Lan, why aren't you dead yet? Hurry up and die. The entire world was cursing, and they were all cursing one person, Mu Lan. But, slowly, there were voices of opposition. This seems to be a bit too much. Mu Lan is guilty of rebelling. This is undeniable. But you don't have to say that about him, right? It's fine if he likes women, but he can't go so far as to like men, right? Can he really like both men and women? Yes, why did all the crimes suddenly become Mu Lan's fault? I don't have the right to comment on other things, but this one is definitely wrong. Mu Lan's ancestral grave is in the imperial capital. How come it's not hundreds of thousands of mu? I went to measure it before. At most, it's only about 100 mu. The Mu family is a large family with a history of at least 1,000,000 years. Is this little bit of graveyard already considered quite small? How did it become hundreds of thousands of mu in your mouth? This is definitely wrong. Yes, this is too much. Yes, not only is Marshal Mu not interested in men, he has also never raped women. I believe everyone in the imperial capital can testify to this. We have nothing to say about you calling him a rebel. Even if you call him a hypocrite, there should be a limit. You can't just throw all the dirty water at Marshal Mu. Hundreds of thousands of women. Which man in this world can satisfy so many women? Even if he is a beast, he doesn't have that ability. His words are too unreliable. And this is even more ridiculous. A total of 1,000 crimes. Even if Mu Lan hires a think tank to help him think of ways to commit crimes, there shouldn't be 1,000 crimes, right? What kind of mentality does the person who spread these rumors have? Isn't this too perverted? Chapter 23:14. That's right. Also, it's even more unnecessary to chase them down after they've been dismissed. Wouldn't it save a lot of effort to deal with them in the barracks? At that time, they were surrounded by the Sky Emperor's army. It's impossible to chase after so many people without being noticed by the Sky Emperor's army. If those people were killed by the Sky Emperor's army, then it might be possible. Haha, I'm just saying it's possible, it's more likely. There are too many suspicious points. Too many of them are illogical, and inconsistent with the facts. Yes, then why smear Mu Lan's name like this? He's already been condemned by everyone. Is there a need to step on him a few more times? I'm afraid there's something strange about this. Yes. Then what's so strange about it? These soldiers are really dead. If that's the case, then if it wasn't Mu Lan's doing, who is the most likely person to have killed them? You're spouting nonsense. Since it's not Mu Lan's side? It must have been His Majesty who ordered the execution. Shh. Silence. I'm just talking about a possibility. I'm not saying that it was His Majesty who did it. It's just that the possibility is higher. The world is so chaotic. Who should we trust? This? In just 5 days, Mo Yunqian's public opinion had changed from everyone cursing Mu Lan in unison to a cloud of fog. Many people began to feel lost, at a loss of what to do. There were also some who began to ponder and search for the so-called truth. What the hell is going on? If Mu Tianlan really wanted to rebel, he would have done it long ago after so many years. Why wait until now? He has always been at the pinnacle of power. Since the rebellion was not Mu Lan's original intention, then why did he do it? What was the reason for him to do it without hesitation? If it's not greed, then what is it? Those who were killed were Mo Yuntian's soldiers. Since they had already left Mu Lan, why were they still killed? His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor has promised to let bygones be bygones. Could it be that His Majesty the Celestial Emperor went back on his word? A monarch doesn't go so far as to joke, right? That's millions of people. What is this for? It's hard to understand. Also, the current situation of the battle is extremely strange. Sky Emperor clearly has an overwhelming advantage. but he is delaying the use of his superior forces to engage in a large-scale battle. Instead, he is letting his soldiers fight one battle after another. That is simply a strategy of suicide. I just heard that when heavenly demons are injured they need a large amount of soul power to recover quickly. What's the big deal about that? There have been similar rumors for a long time. I even heard that as long as one is a powerful martial artist, they would know about this ability of the heavenly demon. Ahem, I was actually saying, didn't Wuxia say, didn't he say, you're saying that His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor needs a large amount of soul energy? That is to say, I'm just guessing. It's just a possibility. That's possible. I've also heard that the Heavenly Demon clan does have such a strange ability. If that's the case, doesn't that mean that His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor is really Heavenly Demon? How can this be said so casually? But there are so many things and all of them point to, it doesn't make any sense. As the saying goes, when things reach an extreme they will move in the opposite direction. Immortality's method was extremely pure. It began to affect public opinion from the opposite direction. Moreover, the two armies that were fighting also began to be suspicious. Each had their own misgivings and each held back. The number of casualties on both sides sharply decreased. However, Yuan Tianjia couldn't make much of a response to this change in situation. Because, after Immortality's explosion, the little bit of energy that Yuan Tianjia had recovered with great difficulty was directly smashed to the freezing point. The damage to his soul was even more serious than that of the calligraphy and painting kings. Even if he ate a large amount of heavenly treasures, he could only recover his physical injuries and cultivation strength. He couldn't recover the damage to his soul. Therefore, Yuan Tianjia was also very helpless. If a large number of people didn't die, how could he quickly recover? Therefore, even though he knew that the direction of public opinion had changed, he could only brace himself and continue to walk down this path. He only hoped that more people would die. This way, his soul would have more energy and he would be able to recover faster. Then, he would eliminate Wuxia in one fell swoop, and it would be much easier to deal with the situation on the continent. As the tide of public opinion rose again, it slowly began to give birth to other opinions. Hey, do you know? In a small voice. What is it? Come closer. Why are you so mysterious? What is it? I heard that in a battle over there was an unprecedentedly violent explosion. His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor flew out, and his entire body was filled with black energy. Filled with black energy? How could that be? That's right, black energy. It is said that is the so-called black energy. Demonic chi. How is that possible? His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor. Quiet. Motherfucker, do you want to die? Even if you want to die, don't kill me. This is too unimaginable, it's really out of my expectations. That's right. Could it be that what Marshal Mu said is actually true? This I will not comment. If one person knew, then 2 people knew. If 2 or 3 people knew, then 200 people knew. Slowly, the entire street of ink cloud sky was whispering to each other mysteriously. As a result, such voices continued to be heard. Hiss, motherfucker. It can't be, motherfucker, motherfucker, motherfucker. At the same time, some of Wuxia's past achievements and attitudes were widely spread by people with intentions. Marshal Mu is actually a good person. That's right, I still remember that Marshal Mu once wrote a poem. It is called, Thousands of Horses and Thousands of Soldiers Out of Ink Cloud Sky, the battlefield is filled with white bones guarding the loyal souls. I would rather die on the battlefield than let down the heavens and my heart. Sigh, Marshal Mu has protected Ink Cloud Sky for millions of years. He is really a good person who protects the country. Have you heard that Yuan Tianjia is a heavenly demon? This matter has already been confirmed. The evidence is conclusive. Ashamed. To think that we were a bunch of idiots before. We lived under the tyranny of the heavenly demon for so many years and still did not know the truth. If not for Marshal Mu, we would really be kept in the dark until we die. That would be a complete tragedy. Is this news reliable? Motherfucker, what do you know? Come. I will explain it to you in detail. Once I finish, you will understand. Woo. So the truth is like this. We have let Marshal Mu down. I deserve to die. I also scolded him the day before yesterday. I really feel bad. I also deserve to die. We need to clear Marshal Mu's name. Heavenly demon, scram out of Ink Cloud Sky. What you said is wrong. We should kill all of these demon bastards. Motherfucker, that disappointing son of mine is still serving in Yuan Tianji's army camp. This old man will immediately write a letter to scold that little bastard for associating with the heavenly demon. He is simply a traitor. The atmosphere on the battlefield slowly became a little strange. After 7 or 8 days, Yuchi suddenly discovered that when he gave orders, there were more and more doubtful gazes looking at him. Moreover, the soldiers also seemed to be somewhat listless. Their morale was unprecedentedly low. There were also some people who would run into a tent at the slightest provocation. Many people were whispering something inside. As soon as he went in, it would immediately become silent. When they fought, they were no longer shouting like before. Instead, they were listless. There were more and more chattering sounds. Although it was only around, Yuchi had already heard it more than once. Heavenly demon, your majesty, I don't know. On the other hand, Mutsang Lan's side was somewhat idle. The daily battle between the two sides seemed to be dealing with official matters. Originally, in a day of battle, both sides would have at least hundreds of thousands of casualties. But in the past few days, especially in the last 1 or 2 days, there were almost no casualties. It was as if the two armies had discussed it. On the battlefield, you, I fight mine. Then we will put on a show and deal with it. Swords came like the wind. Every move missed. Swords came like lightning. Swords cut through the wind. Fists came powerlessly. Palms came like cotton. Anyway, all the attacks did not have the most basic killing power. How could there be casualties? This is also called a fucking war. Yuchi hurriedly gathered all the generals and scolded. Is this how you fucking fight? Such dereliction of duty, such treason. And so? What welcomed him was the questioning and doubtful gazes of the generals. One of the rash generals finally could not hold it in and asked loudly, Marshal Yu, we want an explanation. Is His Majesty Sky Emperor a heavenly demon or not? You must know the truth. You are close to His Majesty Sky Emperor. Hearing this, Yuchi was so angry that his nose became crooked. What nonsense are you saying? You believe such a rebellious rumor? You even dare to ask. You are simply unreasonable. How is it nonsense? If it is not, why doesn't His Majesty Sky Emperor take out evidence to prove himself? So that we have no more doubts? That person was unconvinced and refuted loudly. Bastard. Do you want His Majesty Sky Emperor to strip naked for you to examine carefully? Yuchi was so angry that his face was flushed red. He did not choose his words carefully. That hothead was obviously still unwilling to give up. Yu Lai pinched his brows and ordered, Men, drag this bastard away and give him 200 beatings. In a silent place, the rash youth was dragged away. Chapter 23:15. The generals remained silent. The atmosphere in the tent was as if it was frozen, making people uncomfortable. Looking at the silence of the generals, Yuchi was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He had good intentions in reprimanding that hothead this time. If his words were heard by Luo Yue and the others, that hothead would die immediately. Even the people present would not be able to escape suspicion. He immediately said loudly, I will repeat it once more. His Majesty Sky Emperor is not a heavenly demon. Absolutely not. Whoever has such suspicions in the future will be beheaded in public. Suddenly, a voice full of ridicule came from the sky. This voice said, He's not a heavenly demon? Then you are. Ah, you big idiot. Heavenly demon lackey. Everyone's eyes suddenly darkened as if the whole sky suddenly turned dark. When he looked up, he discovered that an extremely majestic golden dragon had appeared in the sky without him noticing. That golden dragon's body was thousands of feet long. It circled and danced in the air, its huge eyes staring at the camp in the rain. Suddenly, it shook its head and tail and let out a dragon roar that shook the world. Divine beast. Another divine beast appeared in the world? After the phoenix, there was actually a dragon this time. It was also that shocking. All the generals were stunned. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the golden dragon swayed and turned around. Suddenly it roared, Yuan Tianming. Your grandpa is here. Quickly wash your neck and wait for me to chop you heavenly demon cub. With a whoosh, it rose high into the sky and flew towards Xiedanxiong. Over there, the same phoenix roar suddenly sounded, and a huge phoenix rose up to meet the golden dragon. It laughed loudly, Wah! The bottom is finally here. The golden dragon flew into a rage, spitting saliva in all directions. Bullshit. Just as everyone was dumbfounded, the dragon and phoenix suddenly began to fight in the sky. Both of them were extremely vicious, as if they were mortal enemies that could not be allowed to live under the same sky. For a moment, The roar of the dragon and the sound of the wind shook the world, and sand and stones flew for hundreds of miles. Thousands of feet-long divine beasts fighting each other, it was simply a magnificent spectacle. But didn't they say that dragons and phoenixes were auspicious? Why were the dragon and phoenix fighting each other today and fighting so fiercely? Everyone's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. At this moment someone suddenly shouted, "Place your bets, place your bets. Let's see who will win. I bet on AOAO." Everyone turned their heads to look and saw that a few more young men had appeared out of thin air. The person who was speaking looked like a hooligan and his entire body was filled with a rogue aura. Beside him, there was a fellow whose image was not much better than his. He crossed his arms and said with a look of disdain, "Is there even a need to gamble? AOAO will definitely win. How can that damned bird be AOAO's match?" A voice that sounded extremely majestic and mighty said, "Two shameless people fighting now. Do you want me to slash them both with my saber?" A female voice said, "Why are you getting angry with them? Your opponents should be Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing, right? Playing with them will only lower our status. Even if we take a step back, we will have to catch Xie Dan Qiong and beat him up. Only then will we barely qualify, right?" As he spoke, another man and woman appeared. That woman was dressed in black, but her curves were exquisite and charming. Other than being a little cold, she was simply a rare beauty. And that man just stood in the air, but he gave people the feeling that he was the one who lifted the sky with one shoulder. So majestic. The next moment, a piercing sword light came, intentionally or unintentionally cutting a space crack in the air. A cold voice said, "Who wants to fight with me?" A man in black, like a lonely sword, appeared brazenly in the sky, as if he wanted to split the sky into two. The people below were all shocked. Experts. Each and every one of these youths was an expert. When did the Heaven Imperial Court have so many young saints? It was too shocking for such a group of people to stand together. All of them were so strong and yet so young. These people attacked each other verbally, but when their gazes met, they could see the passion in each other's eyes, as well as an inexplicable surprise that could almost make one's heart ache. When Xie Dan Qiong saw these people coming together, he was wild with joy. Looking at the familiar figures that kept appearing in the sky, he almost had the urge to cry out loud, "Brothers, you are all finally here." The brothers attacked and belittled each other, but their eyes were all sparkling. An incomparably familiar feeling arose spontaneously. It was as if they had returned to the Heaven Imperial Court, those days when they were together. When they were happy, they sang and roared together. When the wind blew, they rode together in the martial world. Those years that had passed came back to their memories so vividly. The faint sound of wind and thunder came from the horizon. Suddenly, a flying boat appeared at the end of the sky. Then, another boat appeared and another one. There were a total of nearly 20 flying boats, with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas, whistling all the way. That momentum was really like a king descending to the world. In just a moment, a flying boat had already entered their sight. On the flying boat, there were two big golden words engraved on it. Heavenly Soldier. The brothers looked at the flying boat with fiery eyes, and there was uncontrollable excitement on their faces. "Boss." The flying boat flew across the sky, gradually approaching and finally stopped in the sky above the camp, slowly circling. All the soldiers on Yuan Tianjia's side looked nervous, as if they were facing a great enemy. How could they not be shocked? If these nearly 20 flying boats were also filled with explosives like the crazy one last time, even if only half of them were hidden with gunpowder, when they really exploded, the destructive power would be at least 10 times more than the last time. Under that kind of terrifying power, not a single one of the tens of millions of people here would be left alive. Basically, no one would be lucky enough to survive. Even no one would be able to leave behind a complete corpse. This wouldn't be that crazy too, right? The two great sky demons Iluoyue and Yuan Tianjia stood outside the camp, looking at the flying boats circling in the sky. Their faces were full of solemnity. Now they could already be sure that these flying boats were definitely not owned by the local forces of Mo Yuntian. Moreover, they were definitely not reinforcements for their side. In other words, these flying boats were strong reinforcements for Xie Dan Qiong and Mu Tsanglan. Looking at the dragon and phoenix in the sky, looking at those unfamiliar but high-spirited young experts, Yuan Tianjia said in a heavy voice, "This Xie Dan Qiong, what kind of background does he have? Where did he get so many outside friends? Moreover, all of them are young men with tyrannical strength. I don't understand." Iluoyue said, "Or they were sent by a force connected to Mu Tsanglan." Yuan Tianjia snorted. "Absolutely impossible. Mu Lan is such a bag of old bones. How much weight does he have? How much background does he have? This emperor knows very well. He definitely does not have this kind of face. Also, how old are these people? Prime Minister, you are getting more and more lazy to use your brain recently. Iluiua's face was embarrassed. Of course, that sentence just now was just for fun. With Iluiua's brain, how could she not know that Mu Lan definitely could not have such friends? If he had such strong reinforcements, would he have been so miserably defeated before? If it were not for the fact that Yuan Tianjia needed a large number of souls to recover, he could have attacked with all his strength a few days ago and completely destroyed Mu Lan and Xie Danqiong's forces. He never thought that victory was in his hands and planned to play a cat-and-mouse game, using a large number of souls to recover while he was at it. He had actually given the other side a chance to catch their breath. What little fire there was left was actually going to be reignited. Originally, with Yuan Tianjia and Iluiua's shrewdness, even if they knew that their judgment was wrong, they would not be sad and self-resentful. However, the arrival of these people really made them feel a huge pressure. These young people. Any one of them is a terrifying existence. Even if they are not enough now, they will be in the future. Yuan Tianjia looked at the people opposite him and said in a low voice. Iluiua did not speak. With their current cultivation at the peak of the Saint Realm, although the strength of these young fellows was not bad, it was still not enough. If they really fought with all their strength, they could kill one of them with one palm. However, the potential of these people was extremely terrifying. In the future, they would definitely become a serious problem. Both of them were great people with long lives and deep experience. They could be said to know everything in the world like the back of their hands. However, it was also because of this that they knew how terrifying these young people were. Thinking about how they were the best of the Heavenly Demon clan and had extremely high talent. Today they had reached the peak of the world's cultivators. Even if they faced other monarchs, they might not have the word fear in their hearts. However, seeing these young people today, there was an inexplicable fear in their hearts. Thinking about what kind of cultivation they had when they were in their 20s? When they really thought about this question, Yuan Tianjia and Iluiua both fell silent. The coldness in their hearts grew even stronger. After a long time, Yuan Tianjia finally asked, Luoyue, when you were their age, what were you doing? A bitter expression appeared on Iluiua's face. Your Majesty, this is really hard to say, Sai. He raised his head and said in a reminiscing tone, at that time, I was only an advanced fledgling demon. I was already regarded as the new generation's genius by the whole clan. All the high-grade resources in the clan were all given to me. Moreover, I was also self-satisfied with my level, thinking that I was great. I really looked down on the world and had no regard for anything else. If it was the level of the Heaven Imperial Court, I would probably only be at the advanced Earth level. I'm ashamed, Sai. Chapter 23:16. Iluiua nodded. The potential of these youths is really terrifying. Yuan Tianji's eyes were a little gloomy. He said slowly, I'm afraid that these people will really become a group of purple tycoons in the future. If they really become fully fledged, I'm afraid that our clan will be in danger. Iluiua nodded in agreement. How can we allow such a genius to grow? We might as well destroy him right here and now. If we can destroy them all, it will be our clan's great fortune. On the other side, under the joint command of Xie Danqiong and Mu Lan, a large area was quickly cleared out for the flying boats to land. The flying boats circled and the first one finally landed. The dragon and phoenix in the sky stopped fighting and quickly landed. Then they turned into two youths. GMO Luo Kadi Gu Duxing and the others rushed over. Xie Danqiong's handsome face, which had always been calm, turned red. He was so excited that his limbs were trembling. There was nothing more exciting than suddenly receiving powerful reinforcements when you were in a hopeless situation where you could be defeated at any moment. Moreover, your best brothers had all come to share your trials and tribulations, breathe with you and fight side by side with you. Mo Tianji leisurely walked out of the tent. His face looked as calm as ever, but his footsteps were getting faster and faster. There was a faint, uncontrollable anticipation in his eyes. The cabin door of the flying boat slowly opened. A figure flashed and a black figure appeared at the cabin door first. He had sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, a tall figure and fluttering black hair. He stood tall and straight like a king. However, the excitement on his handsome face slightly destroyed his dignified aura. Mo Qingwu also appeared on Chu Yang's left in a flash of red. Zi Sheqing also appeared on Chu Yang's right in a white robe. 3 people, one white, one black and one red. They flew down at the same time just like that. The man was handsome and elegant while the woman was peerlessly beautiful. It was this moment that was like flying immortals descending from the heavens. Many years later, the soldiers present would still remember this stunning moment in their minds. When I saw the minister and his 2 wives flying down from the airship, I almost suffocated to death. I'll wager it was the most beautiful sight I ever saw in my life. So said one of the generals who was present at the time, many years later. Boss. Big brother. Boss. Jianghu. Second brother. Awu awu awu, dog ant. Wah. I'm a dog ant today. The chaotic and unintelligible noises made the onlookers shocked at first, then felt that it was funny. Then they felt that their eyes were wet. It was an indescribable feeling. It was very real and there was nothing fake about it. Luo Kadi and Gmo flew up, Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong flew over. Mo Qinji and Xie Danxiong stood side by side, their lips trembling as they looked ahead. Dong Wuxiang rudely opened up a path, bringing Mo Lei with him as he dashed forward. But the fastest one was Gu Duxing, who had a sword in his hand. With a flash of sword light, Gu Duxing, who was one with his sword, appeared in front of Chu Yang. Their eyes met and they paused for a moment. Then the 2 of them hugged each other tightly. Then Dong Wuxiang pounced over. In the next moment, Luo Kadi and the rest screamed as they threw themselves into the air and then fell down hard. In an instant, the 7 brothers had piled up into a human mountain on the ground. Mo Qinji's eyes flashed and he said with a trembling voice, "Go quickly." Xie Danxiong shouted with a trembling voice. He flew up and landed on the top of the human mountain. Mo Qinji laughed and was the last to jump up. But he was carrying a huge rock that weighed a few thousand pounds in his arms and he threw himself up with it. "Fuck, you want to kill me? Mo Qinji, you little bastard, I really don't know how your brain grew. Fuck, you're crushing me to death, crushing me to death. Io? You bastard, why aren't you up yet?" Suddenly there was a tsunami of curses. Coupled with the sound of laughter at this moment, this place was a sea of joy. The brothers messed around for a while. Although they had not seen each other for only 2 years, everyone felt as if they had been separated for 3 lifetimes. They were so excited that they felt as if they were going to explode. While they were hugging and joking around, the brothers used a very covert method to quietly wipe their eyes, and then continued to laugh and joke around. In the end, GMO really couldn't control his emotions that were about to explode. He took the lead and punched Luo Kadi in the face. Luo Kadi shouted and stood up, wanting to fight back. He grabbed GMO, the initiator, and the 2 of them began to fight. Seeing this scene, he really didn't know whether these 2 fellows were happy, excited, or just excited. Chu Yang crawled up with his face covered in dirt and shouted, "Brothers!" His voice was a little pretentious and boorish, just like a bandit who had never seen the world. The brothers shouted, "Boss, we're here." Chu Yang shouted, "That bastard. He dares to bully us. What should we do?" "Grab your weapons." Dong Wuxiang shouted, "Go and chop him up." "Let's go." Chu Yang waved his hand in high spirits. "Everyone grab your weapons and follow boss to chop him up." "Whoa, chop him up. Damn it, he's too arrogant. He actually dares to bully my brother. See if I don't beat his dog ant to death. Chop him up. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Ho ho. I'm going to rape him to death." Rui Badong, who was the last to speak, immediately caused a roar of laughter. Instantly it was like a market. "Phoenix is still the best." Wow. She actually raped Yuan Tianming to death. She's too confident. Do you have that ability? Ao Shiyun laughed until tears and snot came out. Waha Rui Badong go. Let us brothers broaden our horizons and broaden our horizons. The brothers clustered around Rui Badong and egged him on. Rui Badong yelled, "There are women here too. We must take revenge openly. That taste is too strong. Damn it, you bunch of hooligans." At the side, Mu Tsanglan was dumbstruck, flabbergasted, and speechless. This was the group of brothers that Xie Kuei had mentioned. At first glance they did look like 5 people, but why did they talk like a bunch of gangsters? This contrast was too big. You really couldn't judge a book by its cover. But how could he know that no matter which one of these people was, they would definitely be the most powerful bandit in this world? There were absolutely no fakes and the goods were genuine at a fair price. It was a fair trade. Just as he was surprised, he suddenly heard a voice call out, "Marshal Mu." Mu Tsanglan turned around and couldn't help but be overjoyed. "Wuya, it's you." The person who came was Meng Wuya. Suddenly meeting an old brother that they thought they would never meet again in this life on the battlefield, Mu Tsanglan and Meng Wuya were both indescribably excited. Thinking about what happened to each other not long ago, They couldn't help but sigh. The initial excitement didn't die down. Chu Yang and the other brothers fooled around for a long time. Until a very rough voice rang out. "GMO, you bastard. Get out here for me." As soon as these words came out, all the brothers felt as if they were struck by lightning, and immediately became silent. Even a certain bird who claimed to want to kill Yuan Tianjia was no exception. Each and every one of them hid to the side with their tails between their legs, afraid that this tigress would see them and implicate them in this unexpected disaster. Apart from Miss Huyan Aobua, who else could have such power and influence? It was really a shout, and the tribulation retreated. Jimo's face spasmed and his neck twisted. His face revealed a rather exaggerated and artificial surprise. He was so stiff that he almost thought that he was dreaming. A tall and slender woman with a round waist and a dignified aura walked over. She grabbed Jimo's ear and sneered, "I haven't been by your side for the past 2 years. I heard that you've been quite dissolute. It said that you've even found 8 or 10 concubines. You're very satisfied, huh?" Her mouth was spouting nonsense and her eyes were already filled with tears. "Heavens, earth, these are all rumors. Who is spreading rumors about me? I didn't. How would I dare?" GMO cried out. "My love for you can only be shown by the heavens. Even if the seas dry up and the rocks crumble, even if the sky falls and the earth shatters, even if my soul scatters, I still won't change." Wrong? I actually wanted to say. What did I want to say? Huyan Aobua almost laughed, but she still grabbed Jimo's ear. "Don't be so anxious. Come with me. Talk slowly. There is time. I will interrogate you properly. You didn't say that you didn't dare. If you dare." Under the dumbfounded gazes of everyone present, she grabbed Jimo's ear and left. Mu Tsanglan, Meng Wuya, and the others who had never seen it before had their eyebrows twitching wildly. Their eyeballs almost flew out of their sockets. If it wasn't for the fact that they had their eye sockets covering their eyes. GMO. This name is really good. Moreover, the wife he found is even better. When these two walk together, it is simply like a cute and lovable bird. It is quite standard. "Little brother." A voice called. When Gu Duxing heard this, it was as if he had been struck by lightning. He turned his head abruptly and looked at the thin and graceful beauty standing not far from him. He opened his eyes wide and said in disbelief, "Sister Xiao Miao?" It was Gu Miaoling. Gu Miaoling stood alone in the wind. Her voice had a tinge of shyness. Gu Duxing roared like a tiger and rushed over. He held her in his arms and said in a low voice, "Sister Xiao Miao, Sister Xiao Miao, Sister Xiao Miao." Chapter 23:17. A satisfied look appeared on Gu Miaoling's face, as well as a girl's unique bashful blush. She said in a low voice, "Quickly put me down, you little fool. There are still so many people watching." Gu Duxing let go of her in a daze and nodded repeatedly. Yes. Sister Xiao Miao is thin-skinned. I'll hug you when there's no one around." Ugh. Gu Miaoling immediately covered her face. She was really so embarrassed that she wanted to crawl into a hole. This muddle-headed guy who only knows about swords and doesn't know anything else, what is he talking about? Beside them, a series of gloating laughter rang out because of this sentence. Of course, it was Luo Kadi and the others who would watch as long as there was a hot draw. Under Gu Duxing's murderous gaze, Luo Kadi continued to laugh as usual, as if he would rather die than laugh to his heart's content. It was a rare opportunity to mock Gu Duxing. If Luo Kadi let it go so easily, he would feel sorry for himself. He would feel even more sorry for all the beatings he had suffered all these years. Today he must laugh to his heart's content. At this time, Madame Mei had already met up with Xie Danqiong, and Ao Shiyun's wife and concubines were also with him. Everyone had reunited after a long separation. There were simply endless things to talk about and endless topics to talk about. Mo Qingwu was also chatting with her brother Mo Tianji, whom she hadn't seen for a long time. It was just that after the initial excitement, Mo Tianji's expression was a little anxious. His eyes were also a little wandering, as if he was looking for something that he had been looking forward to for a long time, but he just couldn't find it. Seeing this, Mo Qingwu pouted and stomped her feet repeatedly. "Second brother, what's wrong with you today? Are you so happy that you've gone silly? Your own sister is right beside you talking to you, but you're distracted. You really can't let me down." Mo Tianji said hurriedly, Yes, this matter really needs to be carefully considered." These words simply did not match the horse's mouth, and even deserved a beating to the extreme. If they really wanted to talk about it according to the conversation, wasn't it extremely annoying? Mo Qingwu looked at her second brother angrily. She simply turned her head and ignored him, returning to Chu Yang's side angrily. Second brother is really too annoying. I've been thinking about him all these years, but I didn't expect him to not think about me at all. I'm so sad. Xie Danqiong's people had already welcomed the people from the flying boat at this time. They had set up a separate camp, and were eagerly receiving the incoming reinforcements. The entire camp was filled with the sound of laughter and the cheerfulness of the space. Even though they were on the battlefield, everyone could clearly feel the excitement in their hearts. This was especially so for the Dream Slayer army. Many of their brothers felt as if they were reunited after a long time. They hugged each other and refused to let go. Right at this moment, Mo Qingwu, who was by Chu Yang's side, suddenly realized that Mo Qingji seemed to have become more energetic all of a sudden. He couldn't help but be startled, secretly following his gaze. At this time, Mo Tianji only had eyes for one person. Obviously, he didn't expect that someone would deliberately observe him. He actually tidied his clothes, stroked his hair, coughed to clear his throat and checked himself from head to toe. After confirming that there were no problems, he suddenly straightened his back and put on a pretentious pose with a very calm and magnanimous expression. Then he strode forward. He laughed heartily and said, "Ha! Miss I knew you would come. It's really been a long time. Miss Lur is even more elegant than before. Congratulations." Across from him there was a pretty girl in white. She was walking down from the flying boat. Her thin and delicate body seemed to be blown away by the wind. Mo Qingwu was so shocked that her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. So that's it. She understood her second brother's thoughts too well. Her second brother's expression had always remained unchanged even if a mountain collapsed in front of him. Even when facing emperors, heavenly emperors and saint monarchs, Mo Qingji wouldn't pay so much attention to his appearance and even deliberately check himself. But today he actually showed such a perverted look in front of Chu Lur, this silly girl who always goes against me. This was simply intolerable. Even if the uncle could tolerate it, the aunt could not tolerate it. Second brother has betrayed me. Mo Qingwu stomped her feet lightly, looking extremely upset. Don't you know that this little girl often makes things difficult for your sister? Quarrels with me often? Don't you know that she's dead set against me and Chu Yang? She attacks me every day and fights me whenever she has nothing to do. Mo Qingji, you're my brother. You actually betrayed me without a firm stand. What's so good about this little girl? Sensing Mo Qingwu's abnormality, Chu Yang lowered his head in surprise. What's wrong? What's wrong? Mo Qingwu said angrily, look at that Mo Qingji, he's making me so angry. He's really a jerk. Chu Yang looked over and saw Mo Qingji and Chu Lur talking politely. He didn't find anything unusual. He wondered, nothing? What are you angry about? Isn't this normal? Mo Qingwu heaved a long sigh of helplessness from the bottom of her heart. She felt even more listless. She leaned into Chu Yang's arms and didn't want to say anything more. At this moment she suddenly understood how Chu Lur felt about her previously. This silly girl actually wants to be my sister-in-law. Is this the jealousy of someone who snatches the person her brother cares about? At the outermost periphery, Great Demon King Tan Tan, who finally appeared in a high profile, was fighting with Rue Badong and Luo Kadi. Of course, it wasn't the kind of fight where they were high up in the air. Instead, it was a vicious brawl on the ground where they were like hooligans. You hugged me, I hugged you. You punched me here and I kicked you there. They fought until their noses were bruised and their faces were swollen, but they were in high spirits. He was beaten until his nose was bleeding, and he was beaten until his heart was broken, yet he was still laughing heartily. He was actually enjoying himself. Tell me, how could this be justified? This made the few excited women sigh in their hearts. The friendship between men is really hard to understand. What is this? If you want to fight, then fight. Can't you fight where there's more meat? You just like to look up. It's as if it's not over until everyone turns into a panda. Can't you just sit down and have a good chat after meeting after a long separation? Reminisce about the feelings of parting? Must you beat them up first and beat them until their noses are bruised and their faces are swollen to vent your excitement? Otherwise it's not over. Men are really a strange kind of animals. After a period of bustling, everything finally returned to order. Everything was arranged in an orderly manner. Xie Danqiong's family was reunited. GMO and his wife were reunited. Tan Tan came with his family. Ao Shiyun was surrounded by his wife and concubines. Xie Danqiong had specially arranged several individual tents for these people. So, these lovebirds that had been separated for a long time could go inside and chat. Then he led the rest of the people into the big tent while chatting and laughing. Xie Danfeng walked in with a pout. Her expression was actually similar to Mo Qingwu's, undisguised unhappiness on her face. Because Xie Danqiong didn't say much before he slipped away with his wife amidst the criticism of valuing women over friends. This made Xie Danfeng, who was inexplicably excited when she saw her brother, feel like a bucket of cold water was poured over her head. On Tan Tan's side he was still shouting and fighting with Luo Kadi. She couldn't even find a shoulder to lean on. It would be strange if he was happy. In the end, Tan Tan, Rui Badong and Luo Kadi all came in with bruises and swollen faces. They sat at the end of the table with panda eyes. Mu Tsonglan accompanied the guests at the side. In any case he treated them to a meal first. Since they were guests, this welcome banquet couldn't be skipped. After this meal Mu Tsonglan actually felt a lot more at ease. This bunch of people looked crazy just now and didn't have any proper manners. But now they looked much more pleasing to the eye. Every one of them was refined and courteous, showing the demeanor of a big family. Whether it was in terms of conversation or knowledge, every one of them was extraordinary. This situation made Mu Tsonglan's heart calm down. What he was most afraid of was that if they were all as crazy as that Mo Tianji, this Mo Yuntian might really disappear from this world. In fact, this was also reasonable. After all of these people were genuine younger brothers of aristocratic families apart from Tan Tan. And the basic conduct of a younger brother of an aristocratic family had long been imprinted in their bones. So, it was only natural that they would behave appropriately on appropriate occasions. As for Tan Tan, this guy's kingly demeanor had long been integrated into his body and mind. His every movement was like that of a king. Even though this guy looked ugly, his kingly demeanor was genuine. Even compared to Zhu Tai Butian, Yuan Tianji and even Shui Leihan, it wasn't inferior at all. And Mu Tsonglan was extremely sensitive to this demeanor. Naturally, he didn't have the slightest intention of underestimating him. But Mu Tsonglan also felt something else. Even though everyone was drinking in full swing, the way they looked at him was more or less, "You old man, why aren't you leaving yet? Why are you still so insensible?" It was a kind of meaning similar to this. Mu Tsonglan could definitely understand this feeling because he really wanted to leave now. As the saying goes, people have the same thoughts and their hearts share the same reasoning. Right now he also wanted to find a quiet place to have a good chat with Meng Wuya and drink some wine in peace. This kind of feeling was actually shared by everyone. But this old man had to stabilize today's situation first. First, 1 round. This is the most basic etiquette. After 3 rounds of drinking, Mu Tsonglan stood up. "Everyone, since we've met again after a long time, there must be a lot to talk about. This old man is old, so I'll go back to rest first. Everyone please forgive me. Wuya, come with me. I have something to ask you." Meng Wuya also stood up as if he had been pardoned. "Okay." The two of them walked out. Just as they walked out of the tent, they heard a boom sound coming from inside. A loud and clear voice shouted, "What? Come, let's drink. Luo Kadi, you're not a man if you don't drink until you're buried under the table." Then he howled like a wolf. "Okay, as long as you drink as much as I drink, there's absolutely no problem. Do you dare? Do you think I'm afraid of a bastard like you? Come, come, come. I'll go first. You drink after me. If I don't drink until you're on your knees today, I'll use my legs to walk from now on." Chapter 23:18. All kinds of noises continued until nighttime. Only then did the brothers finally come to their senses. Then he sat down on a table. Not a single woman was present. Even Mo Qingwu and big sister Zi Xieching, who belonged to the tribulations, were left in Chu Yang's private tent. Chu Yang, Mo Tianji, Gu Duxing, Dong Wushang, GMO, Ao Shiyun, Luo Kadi, Rui Badong and Xie Danqiong. Apart from Mo Qingwu there was no one missing. Everyone had gathered together. Chu Yang sat at the head of the table while Gu Duxing sat at the second seat. There was no dispute about their seats. It had always been like this. Except for the coincidence that year when Rui Badong succeeded in usurping the throne due to his talent in the Phoenix Nirvana but was quickly taken back by Gu Duxing. These 2 seats had never been changed. However, the fact that Mo Tianji was sitting in the 3rd position had aroused the anger of the crowd. In fact, it seemed that it was inevitable that everyone would attack him. "Hey, who are you? What right do you have to sit there? Who do you think you are? Do you know your place?" GMO was the first to speak. His nose was crooked and his eyes were bruised. When he was taken away by Huyen Aobua, his eyes weren't bruised. He must have been beaten up by his woman. Second Master Ji was obviously very dissatisfied with Mo Tianji sitting there. That seat is mine. It was mine in the past and now it's mine. That's true. Our big brother said that we have to arrange the seats based on our abilities. It's fine if no one fights with second Master Gu for his seat, but what right do you, Mo Tianji, have to sit at the third seat? Luo Kadi yelled. That's true. Dong Wuxiang frowned. Mo Tianji, don't be so rude. That seat is not yours, right? Rui Budong squinted and asked, You said that Mo Tianji has no right. I don't object to that. But do you have the right to sit there? I think I should sit there. It's just right. Ao Shiyun snorted. Gu Duxing said coldly, Get out. These people had been plotted against by Mo Tianji. So, they had found an appropriate opportunity to explode at this moment. So, how could they not hit him when he was down? Mo Tianji's expression didn't change. He was calm and composed. He pretended to be indifferent as he smiled. Everyone has made gratifying achievements in their respective worlds. This is truly worthy of celebration. Today, as long as someone says I don't want Mo Tianji to sit here, I can guarantee that his achievements will double after he goes back. Once these words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. Once spoken, they must be carried out. There is absolutely no falsehood. As soon as these words came out, the entire room became silent. Everyone was speechless. Even the extremely daring Dong Wuxiang had subconsciously shrunk his head back. Everyone was well aware of how their achievements came about. If Mo Tianji hadn't set up those desperate hunts that allowed everyone to make breakthroughs in life and death situations one after another, and if their mental states hadn't been tempered, it was likely that everyone's current achievements would only be ordinary. However, no one would want to experience the feeling of being hunted down again. Let alone experiencing that feeling again, even if they dreamed about it in the middle of the night, they wouldn't be able to sleep at night. It was too nightmarish. Especially after they had thoroughly angered Mo Tianji. That kind of pursuit back then had already made everyone feel so much pain that they wished they were dead. Do they want to do it again? That was something that only a fool would do. Although there was no lack of fools here, none of them was a real fool. Therefore, GMO instantly changed his stance and took the lead to express his opinion. Actually, you people really don't know how to appreciate favors. You have eyes but can't see a mountain. I think that Mo Tianji sitting in the third position is what everyone wants. It's just right. It's a perfect combination. There's nothing more suitable. Apart from Mo Tianji, who else is as brilliant and elegant as third brother Mo? Luo Kadi. Are you not convinced? If you're not convinced, then come and spar with me. Luo Kadi frowned as if he had a toothache. When did I say that I'm not convinced? GMO, you're such a fickle, despicable and pretentious villain. GMO said arrogantly, How am I fickle? I'm a staunch supporter of third brother Mo. This point, even if the sea dries up and the rocks rot, my heart will never change. Rui Butong, if you have the guts, then say, I don't want Mo Tianji to sit here. Rui Butong shook his head like a rattledrum. I won't say it. Not only will I not say it, but if anyone dares to say it, I, Rui Butong, will immediately fight them to the death. Actually, only Ao Yun dares to say such words. He has a dragon's gallbladder, which is definitely bigger than a leopard's gallbladder. It's enough to cover the sky. Bullshit. Ao Yun shouted. Then he turned to Mo Tianji and said flatteringly, Third brother Mo, my support for you can only be demonstrated by the heavens. Everyone knows that. Then everyone looked at Dong Wuxiang and said gloatingly, That's true. Other than Dong Wuxiang, who's not afraid of anything, no one dares to say such words. Dong Wuxiang stared for a while and said, I definitely have to say these words. But before I came, Lei said that we're all brothers, so why should we fight for those empty titles? If Mo Tianji sits third, then so be it. Everyone knows how strong each other is and justice is in everyone's hearts. Cough cough, I think Leier's words are very strange. And I don't want to hurt Leier. She told me not to compete with Mo Tianji, so I won't fight for it. Everyone laughed in unison when they heard this. This honest man didn't boast easily, but when he did, every word he said was logical and well organized. It was truly impressive. Mo Tianji waved his folding fan and turned to ask Gu Duxing, Second brother Gu, what do you think? Gu Duxing stared and said, If you have the ability, then come and snatch my second brother? I don't dare. I really don't dare. Mo Tianji was stunned. He smiled bitterly and said, Even if I have the ability, I won't snatch your second brother. Ha ha ha. GMO, Luo Kadi, Rui Butong, Ao Yun and the others laughed in unison. They directly flipped the table and slapped their thighs and buttocks. They laughed so hard that they almost suffered internal injuries. Gu Duxing and Mo Tianji's words really made people's imagination run wild and let their imaginations run wild. "You're here to snatch my second brother?" Chu Yang was drinking a mouthful of wine. At first, it didn't sound like anything, but after thinking about it, he suddenly spat it out and coughed repeatedly. After all this banter, Mo Tianji's position was finally confirmed from today onwards. Third place. Just as Mo Tianji said, even if he had the ability, he wouldn't snatch the second brother's position from Gu Duxing. This represented the most basic form of respect. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing were the first brothers to know each other. The other brothers were basically pulled in by Gu Duxing. Although Gu Duxing had a cold face, he was very warm-hearted. His contribution to this team was definitely not inferior to anyone else's. Under Mo Tianji's threat, the brothers reluctantly acknowledged Mo Tianji's position. But the repercussions were even greater. Seeing that Mo Tianji effortlessly took the third brother's position, the eyes of the others turned red. Everyone was the same brother. Who didn't want to be at the front? As long as they could get the word brother, it would be very pleasant to hear. Giving in once is already considered as fulfilling our brotherhood. Who dares to snatch the fourth brother's position from me? Dong Wuxiang roared like a tiger. Unfortunately, the tiger's roar didn't intimidate the others. Instead, it attracted a lot of covetous gazes. What? We don't dare to snatch the first and second brother. Third brother disappeared in the blink of an eye. Why is fourth brother being snatched away now? You can't say that. Humph. Ao Xie Yun sneered and turned his neck. Ha ha ha. Xie Danqiong laughed as if he had some bad intentions. Ha ha. Rui Butong rubbed his fists and was eager to give it a try. Roar. Luo Kudi's eyes lit up as he waited for an opportunity to make his move. Ha ha ha. GMO laughed strangely. His intentions were not good. What are you laughing at? Who doesn't agree? Come out. Dong Wuxiang flew into a rage and kicked over the table. This is too much of a bully. Look at Mo Tianji. He only said one sentence and he became the third brother. My threat with the dark saber had no effect at all. This is too much of a blow to my self-esteem. Chu Yang looked at the brothers with interest. He didn't have the slightest intention to dissuade them. He even seemed to be fanning the flames and taking pleasure in their misfortune. On the other side, Mo Tianji had already issued a reward. Whoever can defeat Dong Wuxiang, I can guarantee that when we go to war against the heavenly demons, I will give him a vanguard position. Once a promise is made, it can't be taken back. There is no falsehood. Mo Tianji had long been recognized as the military advisor by the brothers. All military operations would be arranged by him. The weight of these words was self-evident. In an instant there was an unprecedented smell of gunpowder. Dong Wuxiang was already holding the dark saber and striding out of the door. He shouted outside, "Now it's not only the title of fourth brother but also the position of vanguard. Only the winner can get it." Mo Lei Air, who had been outside the tent all this while, covered her forehead. My adorable and naive husband. You haven't even gotten anything yet, but you have already become the target of public criticism. Now won't the others come to find trouble with you? Actually, when they met, Mo Lei Air had already determined the general level of this group of people. They were basically about the same level. However, Chu Yang and Gu Duxing were slightly better than the rest. As for the others, GMO and Luo Kudi were slightly weaker but not by much. They were still at the same level. Mo Lei Air was really shocked by this reality. She was really shocked. How in the world did these people increase their cultivation? How did they all improve so quickly? She and Dong Wuxiang had been fighting with their lives on the line and found a way to survive in the face of death. It was only then that they could reach their current level of cultivation. It was really unbelievable. Chapter 23:19. But against Ao Shiyun and Xie Danqiong, Dong Wuxiang didn't have much of an advantage. As long as he wasn't careful, the tables could be turned. And this was in a one-on-one situation. But if he faced two or more opponents or if they took turns fighting him, he wouldn't stand a chance at all. Mo Lei Air had been silently calculating in her heart how she could give Dong Wuxiang the greatest chance of winning. After all, it was an honor to have a husband and a wife. Having a bunch of people calling her sister-in-law was better than having a bunch of people calling her sister-in-law. But at this time, Dong Wuxiang challenged a bunch of people alone. That night, the sounds of fighting didn't stop. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji and the rest watched for a while and fanned the flames. After that, they went into a small tent to discuss other matters. As for the remaining few people, under Gu Duxing's supervision, They were beaten black and blue for the whole night. Dong Wuxiang's situation was the most miserable. He was covered in injuries and his whole body was almost beaten up. But his results were good. In the end, he won by a small margin. He obtained the position of fourth brother. Among the brothers, only Dong Wuxiang, the fourth brother, had the hardest time getting it. He only managed to snatch it after being beaten to death. Even so, Ao Shiyun and Xie Danxiong were still a little indignant about this result. Even after they admitted defeat and called him fourth brother, the two of them gritted their teeth and did so. That indignation was practically on the verge of bursting out. Ignoring the fighting outside, Chu Yang and Mo Tianji discussed in the tent. The current situation is like this. Although it's not very pessimistic, we can't be careless. Mo Tianji explained the situation here in detail. Although it was said to be very detailed, it was actually very, very detailed. The details, the many-minute changes and so on, were simply like a super expert who understood the whole thing clearly. Even if Xie Danxiong, who was involved in this matter, was here now, he would be dumbfounded and admit that he was inferior. Because this kind of information was definitely something that he couldn't produce even if he worked hard to gather it for a lifetime. On the other hand, Mo Tianji had only been here for a few days. Moreover, he had been out of touch with his intelligence department for quite some time. Yet, he was able to come up with such detailed information today. It could be said that he was flawless and flawless. This kind of super strong coordination ability was really dumbfounding. How could they not be convinced? After Chu Yang listened carefully to Mo Tianji's summary, he pondered for a moment. Then he said in a deep voice, "So, the current situation is that both sides don't want to fight anymore? Only Yuan Tianjia wants to fight?" Chu Yang's question could be said to be sharp and to the point. Mo Tianji pondered over Chu Yang's question for a while before replying, "Perhaps I can't say for sure. Right now, I can only say that the vast majority of soldiers don't want to fight. At least, before the facts are settled, the soldiers don't have the will to fight. Of course, those generals who were loyal to Yuan Tianjia like Yuqi and the rest were exceptions. They would still do their best to fight. Because if Yuqi wanted to replace Mu Tsanglan and Mo Yuntian, then Mu Tsanglan would have to be completely eliminated. She would definitely not allow Mu Tsanglan to have a chance to recover. This is the so-called blinded by greed. So, the current situation is that even if Yuan Tianji doesn't want to fight anymore, Yujia will still insist on fighting." Mo Tianji cautiously said, "So what you said just now is not correct. Neither side wants to continue fighting." Chu Yang pondered and said, "If that's the case, then it's a little difficult. If everyone other than Yuan Tianjia doesn't have the will to fight anymore, then the situation is relatively easy to control. But as long as there are people who insist on fighting, then it's a completely different matter." Mo Tianji nodded and said, "That's true. The leader of the other side is still Yuqi and the rest. They have the final say. Even if the soldiers don't have the will to fight, the other side's military strength, combat power, and strength are still far above ours. If Yuqi is really allowed to fight to her heart's content, then the threat may be even greater than before. After all, Yuan Tianjia's strategy is a very passive and inefficient method. And once Yu Lai commands the army to attack with full force, if they use the method of Blood Blade of the law enforcement team to supervise the battle, then even if we don't lose, we will definitely have to pay a heavy price. Moreover, most of the soldiers there who have already lost their fighting spirit will become complete sacrificial lambs. Even if they don't die at the hands of our people, they won't be able to escape from the law enforcement butcher's knife of Yuqi and the rest. This is undoubtedly a deadlock." Chu Yang nodded deeply, "I think so too. It's really a difficult deadlock to resolve. If they don't understand the truth and don't doubt the truth, then fighting with us and killing them won't have the slightest psychological burden. But now that they have begun to doubt, if we kill them and kill their comrades, then it will be somewhat inexcusable." Mo Tianji said, "Especially those who used to work with them in the first place. I'm afraid that the guilt in their hearts will be even more intense. If we don't resolve it well, even if we can win this battle in the end, it will have a huge impact on future battles. It will only have a great impact, and many people will even develop inner demons because of it." Chu Yang frowned and pondered. "If that's the case, to break the deadlock, there's actually a way. It's simple and immediate." Chu Yang said slowly. "How can I not have thought of that? But it's undoubtedly very difficult to realize that method. The chances are very slim." Mo Tianji lightly tapped his forehead with his finger and said softly, "Because Yuan Tianjia is already seriously injured." Chu Yang nodded. The two of them undoubtedly thought of the same thing. But neither of them said it out loud. They began to think of countermeasures. What if the painting and calligraphy kings go and assassinate him? Mo Tianji frowned and said, "This is definitely not advisable." Chu Yang smiled bitterly. The painting and calligraphy kings have a deep hatred for Yuan Tianjie. Once they assassinate him, it'll be a fight to the death. But looking at the current strength, there's more than a 50% chance that the painting and calligraphy kings will die. The other 50% chance is just mutual destruction. I don't agree. Mo Tianji nodded. That's also reasonable. The chances are indeed too slim. Once we fail and alert the enemy, the situation will be even worse. Moreover, once we send someone to assassinate him, if we can't successfully force out Yuan Tianjie's real body, then I'm afraid that the other party will make a big fuss and arouse the mentality of many people to unite against a common enemy. If the situation returns to the previous situation, then we'll be too passive. Chu Yang said. So, if we want to take action, there's only one chance. There was only one chance. Once everything was done, it would be a great success. If we can't do it that time, the only result will be alerting the enemy. Then I'm afraid that we'll be left in dark cloud sky for the next few years and fall into a long-term battle. And the people who die on both sides will be our comrades in the heavenly imperial court. Mo Tianji said in a deep voice. More importantly, we obviously can't afford to waste time. Chu Yang nodded in deep agreement. Yuan Tianjie has been in dark cloud sky for many years. There must be a lot of heavenly demon experts around him. And these experts must be very strong. At the very least, they should be at the heavenly man level or above. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they're at the saint level. Mo Tianji said, but now that the battle has reached this stage, other than that Iluoyue confirmed by Commander Mu, not a single heavenly demon expert has shown up. Doesn't this mean one thing? These heavenly demon experts don't have the same concealment skills as Yuan Tianjie. Once they fight with all their strength, their real bodies will be revealed. So Yuan Tianjie won't let them take action if he can. Mo Tianji said solemnly, but from another perspective, this also shows how important Yuan Tianjie is to his sensitive identity. If our plan doesn't go well and we can't force him to a dead end, then he won't really be exposed. That's natural. Chu Yang nodded lightly. Now the first problem is that Yuan Tianjie's own strength is really very strong. It's very difficult to deal with him. And on our side, we don't have any experts who can be compared to him. If only the Demon Empress or the East Sovereign were here. As long as one of them takes action, we can easily force him to show his true form with a little cooperation. But with our current strength, no one can do this in terms of individual combat power. If we can't do it in terms of individual combat power, we can't even completely tie him down. Once the situation is bad, he can escape at any time. We can't stop him from deliberately escaping. Mo Tianji said, this is the first problem. Continue. Chu Yang pondered. The second problem is that Yuan Tianjie is now under the protection of tens of millions of troops. There are as many experts as there are clouds. We don't have a chance to fight him in a one-on-one battle. If we carry out an assassination, if our assassins can't force him to show his true form in the first moment, other experts will arrive. We have no way to deal with this. Continue. Chu Yang nodded with his eyes closed. The third problem is that the Saint Lord has publicly expressed his full support for Yuan Tianjie. The reason is really worth thinking about. Mo Tianji said lightly, there must be some reason that we don't know. If at a critical moment the Saint Lord expresses his support again, and we can't force Yuan Tianjie to show his true form at that time, the consequences will be very serious. It's very likely that all our previous efforts will go down the drain. So, even if there's no way to deal with this, we don't have much time left. Mo Tianji said seriously, we have to guard against this. If the Saint Lord can express his support once, he can help twice. It might even be substantial help. We do need to guard against this. Chu Yang sighed softly. This undoubtedly increased the difficulty by a lot. I think. Fine beads of sweat appeared on Mo Tianji's forehead. He unconsciously reached out his hand to wipe them and said, Saint Monarch, shouldn't be. Heavenly Demon, shouldn't be. These words could be said with great reluctance. Chu Yang was very dissatisfied. Where's the evidence? Mo Tianji rolled his eyes and almost scolded. You say that he's an extraterrestrial demon, but where's your proof? Isn't this making things difficult for me? But of course he could not say this out loud. If he really said it out loud, Mo Tianji did not doubt that Chu Yang would beat him up on the spot. Because now was definitely not the time to bicker. Chuyang looked at Mo Tianji. Where's the evidence? Chuyang asked again very seriously. Chuyang knew that Mo Tianji was such a person. Some things needed to be forced to find out. Then even if there was no reason, Mo Tianji could find a reason. The famous saying of stirring up trouble without reason was carried forward by people like Mo Tianji. And now for the time being Chuyang needed such a reason. Even if there was no life. Even if it was undeniable. Even if it was just a guess. Even if it was possible. Mo Tianji frowned as he heard this. He pondered with great difficulty. In fact, ever since Mo Tianji knew that Saint Monarch was not an extraterrestrial demon, he had been suspicious of Saint Monarch's identity. As a qualified strategist he had to think carefully. No matter how absurd the possibility was, he could not let it go. But Saint Monarch, the number one person in the Heaven Imperial Court, if even he was suspicious, if even this number one person could be an extraterrestrial demon, then what hope did the Heaven Imperial Court have? Although Mo Tianji knew that Saint Monarch was suspicious, he still forced himself to let go of this clue. This was also the main reason why the previous rumors did not suspect that Saint Monarch was an extraterrestrial demon. That was a forbidden area that could not be doubted. But at this moment Chuyang was clearly questioning this forbidden area. After a long time Mo Tianji said, "If you must say, then there are a few things that can prove that Saint Monarch is not an extraterrestrial demon." Chuyang's eyes lit up. Say it. In fact, Chuyang did not want Saint Monarch to be an extraterrestrial demon. He would rather believe that Saint Monarch was blinded by some external force or because of some special factors. Even if he was blinded by greed, he would still be more honest than Saint Monarch. It was good that he was transformed from an extraterrestrial demon. The first reason is very simple and very objective. Saint Monarch was recognized as the number one expert in the Heavenly Imperial Palace. He was in charge of the Heavenly Imperial Palace not because he was highly respected and virtuous, but because his martial strength was the absolute number one at the peak. No one could compare to him. No one below Di Ho was his opponent. That was why he occupied the position of Saint Monarch. If he was really an extraterrestrial demon at that time, he could have killed all of Di Ho and destroyed the most elite of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. Even if he was not strong enough and could not kill all of them, he could still find an excuse to say that he had failed once or twice. It would not be a big deal. After all, Di Ho was just a few top experts and not the king who had the power to rule over a region today. Because that was a battle of life and death. If that was the case, the Heavenly Imperial Palace would have lost a lot of power. Saint Monarch did not do so and help Di Ho today. This is the first reason. As Mo Tianji spoke, he slowly organized his thoughts and chose his words carefully. Chuyang nodded silently. The second point is that the 10 heavens and earth of this Heaven Imperial Court were actually personally created by the Saint Monarch. This is truly a huge supernatural power that reaches the heavens. Furthermore, other than the extreme heaven, each of the 10 heavens and earth has a small territory that is ingeniously connected. Of course, excluding the two opposing heavens and earth. The location of the connection is very strange. It is adjacent to the purple cloud heavens. Mo Tianji took out a map and pointed out these few locations on the map. Chuyang looked at it seriously and his face became a little doubtful. This can completely explain. When Saint Monarch divided the 10 heavens and earth, his real purpose was to regulate the Heavenly Imperial Palace and have their own strict rules and regulations. Another obvious reason was to guard against the invasion of the extraterrestrial demons. Mo Tianji pondered and said, "This is a very outstanding defensive formation. Even if I personally arranged it, it would not be as good as this. The Heavenly Imperial Palace is really too big. It is impossible to completely unify it." Chuyang looked carefully and said, "That's not necessarily the case. If the extraterrestrial demons were to invade, this would indeed be the best and fastest route for the various heavens to send out their troops. However, if the extraterrestrial demons were to really make a move and invade the various heavens, wouldn't this route also be the most convenient one? It is hard to say who is truly convenient by doing this." Mo Tianji smiled and said, "Boss, you're too stubborn in believing that there's something wrong with the saint. This line of thinking is too biased. Back then, the extraterrestrial demons paid such a huge price just to deal with purple cloud heavens. They could not move for a million years. Where did they get the strength to deal with the 10 heavens and earth at the same time? If they did not divide their troops, the extraterrestrial demons could still be considered a serious problem. But if they attacked separately, the extraterrestrial demons would become clowns. How could they withstand a single blow?" Mo Tianji snorted. Obviously he was very dissatisfied with Chu Yang's nitpicking. If he did not have sufficient evidence, why would he bring it up? There is one more point, and it is also the most important point. Since Saint Monarch took over, except for the Purple Cloud Heavens incident, the overall strength of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, including the population and the number of experts, has increased by more than 10 times compared to 1,000,000 years ago. Whether it is the increase in wealth, manpower or the cultivation of experts, Mo Tianji said, all of them are real military strength. From this point, Saint Monarch has really made a great contribution to the Heavenly Imperial Palace. Chu Yang racked his brains to find a loophole but realized that he really could not refute it. He could not help but feel depressed and said, according to your analysis, Saint Monarch is actually a very good person? At least, he is a great contributor to the Heavenly Imperial Palace. But, if that is the case, why did the Purple Cloud Heavens fight alone? But now he was helping Yuan Tianji so much, what was going on? This does not make sense. If Saint Monarch is a good person who thinks wholeheartedly for the Heavenly Imperial Palace, then, are the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor Zihao and Donghuang Shuelehan bad guys? Chu Yang shook his head hard. Although they did not interact much, I think that these two emperors are definitely not despicable people. They also do not have any connection with the extraterrestrial demons. There is no room for doubt about this. Mo Tianji said seriously, although I am sure that Saint Monarch has made great contributions to the Heavenly Imperial Palace and is indeed a contributor to the Heavenly Imperial Palace, I definitely did not say that. Saint Monarch is a good person. Mo Tianji revealed a mocking smile and said, since ancient times, those who can ascend to such a high position, even the ruler of a country in the lower three heavens, are not good people. A contributor and a good person are two completely different concepts, right? Chapter 23-21. Perhaps the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Clouds, Zihao, is a good person deep down. Mo Tianji sighed softly, therefore even though he has already become a Heavenly Emperor, it is inevitable that he will die an unnatural death. Chu Yang was silent. After a long time he suddenly asked seriously, Tianji, are you a good person? Mo Tianji was furious. What do you mean by that? Are you mocking me? Chu Yang laughed. Actually in our land, other than Qing Wu and Miss Liu, there is not a single good person. Who dares to say that they are good people? Who dares? Mo Tianji's words were obviously a little angry. Chu Yang sighed deeply and said softly, how can there be a good person in the martial world? Even for people like us, we have already caused the destruction of countless families. The sins under our hands have long accumulated. The bones under our feet have long piled up into mountains. As long as we can ask for a clear conscience, it's fine. Chu Yang sighed. Mo Tianji's words made Chu Yang sigh inexplicably. Mo Tianji was silent for a long time. Then he changed the topic and said, Saint Monarch may have done many wrong things in the past. But I think that he must have his own reasons for doing so. It may not be a reason to meet people, but there must be a reason. If the supreme ruler of a generation is really the incarnation of the heavenly demon, then this heavenly imperial court may have long ceased to exist, or it may have long become the territory of the heavenly demon. Mo Tianji said, this is my strongest reason. Chu Yang could only nod. Mo Tianji's reason was undoubtedly strong, unquestionable and unshakable. Since this was the case, then the matter of why he protected Yuan Tianjie and the Purple Cloud's heavens could be temporarily put aside. The biggest rock in his heart was removed first. Since we have reached a consensus on this point, then our most important goal now is to start planning to kill Yuan Tianjie. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, what I'm most afraid of isn't Yuan Tianjie, but if Saint Monarch is really a heavenly demon after we defeat Yuan Tianjie, then we'll have destroyed the long-term plan that the heavenly demon side has deployed for who knows how many years. If this causes the other side to counterattack, then with our current strength, we won't have any leeway to resist. We'll definitely die. We still need some time to grow. Chu Yang smiled helplessly. Mo Tianji sighed and said helplessly, that is indeed the case. If the Saint Monarch is really the incarnation of the heavenly devil, then we really can't withstand the powerful counterattack after killing Yuan Tianji. Chu Yang made the final decision and said, but now, let's just take it that this concern has been dispelled, let's kill Yuan Tianjie first. Kill him. What Chu Yang said was kill. The next step of the plan was to kill them. Getting rid of Yuan Tianjie was different from misleading, exposing, and subverting him. It was difficult to rely on external forces, and one or a few of them had to do it personally. Considering Yuan Tianji's own strength and his own abilities, how could it be easy to get rid of him? This was undoubtedly an extremely difficult problem, but as tribulation strategist he had to face it head-on. Mo Tianji didn't say anything more. Instead, he sank into a long period of contemplation. Forcing Yuan Tianji to reveal his true form under the current circumstances was already a problem that was harder than ascending to the heavens. And after forcing him to reveal his true form, he would no longer have any scruples and would become even more terrifying. If they wanted to kill him, the difficulty would increase by more than double. Under the protection of tens of millions of soldiers, experts were as numerous as clouds, and their trump cards were probably still far from being used up. Yuan Tianji's own strength was also a super expert that far exceeded theirs. Furthermore, considering Yuan Tianji's special identity, he wouldn't casually enter the battlefield. How to get rid of him? In an instant, Mo Tianji's mind had already gone through at least 30 or 40 plans. But every one of them was inferred from the opposite direction, and because of various factors, flaws and reasons, they all failed to work. Chu Yang quietly walked out. Only Mo Tianji was left alone in the tent, deep in thought. This was Mo Tianji's specialty. Even Chu Yang couldn't interfere. If he hastily interfered, it would only disturb Mo Tianji's train of thought. There was no benefit to it. Speaking of which, Minister Chu didn't feel any pressure at all. He didn't even think about whether or not it was easy to kill Yuan Tianji, or how to kill him. He only felt that his entire body was relaxed and comfortable, and it was rare for him to feel comfortable. In the time that Mo Tianji wasn't by his side, he had to do all these brainstorming things himself. Now that this guy was finally by his side, of course he had to hand over all these things to him. Wouldn't it be more refreshing to drink wine and brag on his own? Of course, Chu Yang made this choice because he believed that Mo Tianji would definitely have a way. He definitely would. Outside it was still in full swing. The brothers had just met and were fighting to their heart's content. It was like a raging fire, and it was hard to tell who was the winner. Right now there were two pairs of people fighting each other. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were wrestling and rolling around on the ground, while GMO and Luo Kadi were fighting each other. Both sides had already turned into two pig-headed people with panda eyes. Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang were watching the fight from the side with their hands behind their backs. Xie Danqiong didn't have an opponent for the time being. Having no opponent meant that he didn't have a ranking. His face was gloomy. With two bangs, Ao Xieyun kicked Rui Butong's stomach fiercely. At the same time, Rui Butong also punched his chest heavily. The two of them rolled to the sides at the same time like rolling gourds. Then they stood up and wrestled again. Then, with a plop, they rolled on the ground and rolled around again. This scene definitely didn't look like a fight between two saint-level experts. It looked more like two hooligans fighting to the death for half a tael of silver. If other saint-level experts were to see this scene, they would definitely be ashamed to call themselves saint-level experts. At the very least, these brothers in front of them would all be removed from the list of saints. Not only did saint-level experts have high cultivation, they also had to have a certain level of moral integrity. Did these people in front of them even have any moral integrity? What's the situation now? Who's first and who's last? Chu Yang's mouth twitched as he asked Gu Duxing. Number 4 has already appeared. Look at this guy. He's the one who's at the top. Gu Duxing pursed his lips in Dong Wushang's direction and said, as for number 5 and the subsequent rankings, they're still in the process of being produced. Cough cough cough. Chu Yang coughed violently a few times. He looked at the few people on the ground whose faces were almost indistinguishable. Everyone's faces were swollen like a pig's head. They had panda eyes and were covered in gray clothes, whose original color and texture couldn't be seen. He subconsciously swallowed his saliva and said, it seems a little tragic. Gu Duxing pursed his lips. Boss, you're wrong today. These guys are very restrained. Don't look at how they're beaten up. In fact, none of them are injured. Not even the slightest bit of internal injuries. What kind of result can they achieve by fighting like this? If they really fought with their lives on the line, it would be more like it. Dong Wushang's wave just now was the real deal. Dong Wushang cracked open his bruised lips and snorted. I don't care about them. It's fine as long as they call me Big Brother. What's a little injury? Noodles, that's noodles. Chu Yang was surprised. This guy's requirements were really low. But at least his words made sense. As the saying goes, if you're not in charge, you don't know the cost of firewood and rice. How could a certain king of hell who was used to being the boss understand the thoughts of his brothers? This round went on for an entire night. Finally, the outcome was decided. Xie Danqiong, who had been unhappy earlier, was waiting at ease for the exhausted ones. When the 4 of them were exhausted from fighting, he took advantage of their precarious state to issue a challenge. 1 against 4, the result was very obvious: complete victory. And so, a certain someone who was far-sighted, cunning, and took advantage of others' precarious state was ranked 5th. Ao Shiyun was ranked 1st. Ji Mo's sneak attack succeeded and he was ranked 7th. Luo Kadi was ranked 8th. Rui Badong was the most aggrieved. After being sneak attacked by GMO, he was hit by Luo Kadi when he was down. Finally, Xie Danxiong took advantage of his precarious state. Tragically, he was ranked last. He gritted his teeth in indignation. But since the boss had already made the decision, he could only follow the order. The pitiful Rui Badong was truly reduced to being the youngest from now on. In the days that followed, he constantly heard shouting and wrangling. "Youngest, pour a cup of tea for me. Little brother, you better stand properly. Listen to your 7th brother's lecture. Listen to your big brother's golden rule. Youngest, come over for a while. I have something to talk to you about." But no matter what, the rankings of the brothers were officially set from today onwards. It was no longer as messy as before. In the past, it always gave people a muddle-headed and annoying feeling, but from now on, everyone finally stopped randomly adding names to themselves. Because there would definitely be people who would object. And since they were adding names to the big ones. Unfortunately, the big ones couldn't be offended. They really couldn't beat them. Mo Tianji heaved a sigh of relief and slowly walked out. Seeing his expression, Chu Yang was relieved. Judging from his expression, he must have thought of a solution. A think tank wouldn't be a think tank. Everyone had their own specialties. In the future, such work would all be handed over to someone else. The strength that we have now is still not enough. Mo Tianji pointed at Dong Wuxiang, Gu Duxing and the others with some disappointment. This bunch of people's progress is really too slow. When they went to the Imperial Court, all of them were already at the Earth level. Until now, it took them more than 2 years to reach this level. They obviously had such a good opportunity and such a good cultivation environment, but they only have this little bit of cultivation. How shameful. With the manpower we have here, even if we all join forces against the enemy, I'm afraid we still won't be a match for that guy Yuan Tianjia. This is the biggest problem right now. Progress is too slow? It took them 2 whole years to reach the Saint level from the Earth level. Chapter 23-22. His words were not an exaggeration. It took him a long time to calm down. He felt so conflicted that he almost fainted again. The 2 of them were having a conversation just now. They were reminiscing about their parting. However, these tents weren't soundproof. Moreover, their cultivations were high. Moreover, Chu Yang's side didn't deliberately set up a soundproof barrier. Therefore, the 2 of them were very clear about what was going on here. Seeing these guys fighting like hooligans, the 2 of them could only pretend that they did not hear anything. What else could they do? If they did not want to be with them, they could only pretend that they did not know. But what Mo Tianji had just said was really too shocking. No matter how much they pretended that they did not hear or know, they could not. You motherfucker, in just 2 years, you went from Earth level to Saint level and you still think that it is too slow. How could you even think of saying that? How can you motherfucker say this? Are you not afraid of being beaten to death by those Saint-level martial artists in the Heaven Imperial Court? You actually said, 2 whole years only? You've improved to such a level. Especially the words only and only, it made Mu Tsanglan and Meng Wuya want to bang their heads against the wall. You've only used 2 years to cross so many levels and you still think it's too slow? Then shouldn't we, who have waited hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years to reach this level, kill ourselves early so that we won't become a laughingstock? Motherfucker. Mu Shui swore, which was a rare sight. He muttered, in just 2 years they have already reached this level. Even if there are many opportunities, it is still unprecedented. And you still think that it is too slow. If these guys were really given 2 million years, wouldn't they be able to blow away the Heaven Imperial Court with just a breath? My current mood can only be summed up in one word: motherfucker. Meng Wuya could only smile bitterly because he also thought the same. Mu Tsanglan and Meng Wuya definitely didn't know just how wise and far-sighted they were right now. It seemed that after a long time Chu Yang and his brother's achievements had really reached such a realm. Moreover, they were still gradually surpassing it, gradually increasing, gradually leaping. How did such evildoers and a group of evildoers at that? For such a person to appear once in a few million years, it was already a legend. Now, a bunch of them had appeared at once. A bunch of legends? A bunch of legends. Mu Tsanglan frowned and said, "The most ridiculous thing is that these people are all gathered together and working together?" This was really surprising. As long as time passes, what power in the world will be able to contend against them? Meng Wuya smiled bitterly. "Actually, I'm also wondering about this." Mu Tsanglan suddenly laughed bitterly. "Just listening to their conversation is enough to kill me?" At this moment, Mo Tianji was lecturing them. "None of you are working hard. Look at your pitiful cultivation, what can you do? If others see you, they will laugh at you to death." Everyone lowered their heads in shame and admitted their mistakes. "Yes, we really didn't work hard enough. We're ashamed, what a pitiful cultivation base." Mu Tsanglan's face revealed a constipated expression. He closed his eyes tightly and waved his hand, activating a soundproof barrier. "Did you hear that? Did you hear what the novel said? Also, what did those guys say? I'm ashamed. What a joke. I have a million years of self-control, but I really can't listen to it anymore. You guys are already like this and you still don't work hard. Then what does it mean to work hard? You guys are already like this and you still want to feel ashamed? You still want to laugh? Tell me, do you still want to give others a way out?" Meng Wuya's face was also tangled. These people are really daring. That Chu Yang with an ant's cultivation base dared to kill Yuan Shu Tuesday. That Xie Dan Xiong with an ant's cultivation base dared to raise a flag and rebel. The way these people do things cannot be judged by common sense. Let's pretend we didn't hear it. Sigh. The two of them looked at each other and let out a long sigh. They both had a speechless feeling of "we're old. If our cultivation base is not enough, then we will improve it further." Chu Yang's face revealed a thoughtful expression. Then he clapped his hands and said, "Since the general direction has been decided, then come everyone. I have something good to share with everyone." Mo Tianji's eyes lit up. Could it be that boss has something good to improve cultivation base again? But everyone's cultivation base had already reached this level. Although the heavy pill had a great effect and had a certain effect on improving cultivation base, it really didn't have much meaning to everyone at the moment. Moreover, the real miraculous effect of that thing was that it could instantly heal injuries and strengthen one's foundation. It was also a good thing. Purely using it to improve one's cultivation base was really not worth the loss. The brothers didn't have Mo Tianji's brain. In an instant they had already made 180 turns and jumped up nimbly. Even the previously dejected Rui Budong suddenly became lively and full of energy. Everyone knew that since boss said it was something good, then it must be a super good thing that was hard to find in elegant heavenly palace. It must be of great use. Chu Yang's target was the netherworld fruit. The remaining fruits were just enough for 3 people. As for the others, he had already used them for other purposes. Chu Yang had also hardened his heart and simply made all of these treasures in one go. They could not afford to lose this battle. As for the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit, it was a pity. Although there were still a lot of it because the brothers had already used it once in the Chongtian continent, even though the 13 of them had used it together, it still didn't have any effect. Now that they had used it repeatedly, other than strengthening one's foundation, there was no other effect. This point made Chu Yang moan and groan. It wasn't easy for him and the brothers to reach the level where each of them could use one, but it didn't have any effect. This really made people speechless. But being able to strengthen one's foundation was also quite effective. Therefore this time, everyone took one heaven-earth arcane yellow fruit each. The latter half of the night passed quietly in the cultivation area. The only thing that made Chu Yang feel surprised was that although the battle here was in full swing, Tan Tan, who always liked to be lively, actually didn't come to participate. This didn't seem to be in line with his temperament. In the morning of the second day, when Mu Tsanglan and the rest gathered in the tent, they were very surprised to find that they had not received any news from these people for a short period of time. In such a short period of time, it was as if they had been reborn. The most ridiculous thing was that everyone's cultivation had obviously soared by a lot. Everyone's body was full of energy, and there was a faint divine light. Obviously the improvement this time was not small. So much so that a few of them had already broken through their bottlenecks, and started to advance towards the high-level saint level. And they had already walked a considerable distance. Mu Tsanglan and the others were fiercely shocked by this reality. What was going on here? It had only been one night. They had clearly only heard them fighting the entire night. How did they suddenly improve so much? This was too unimaginable, too shocking, too inconceivable, too incomprehensible, right? If they all rushed forward at such a speed, wouldn't they be able to catch up to me in a few days? Mu Zonglan was obviously thinking too much and was a little whimsical. If it weren't for Chu Yang's large amount of heavenly treasures, it wouldn't have been able to create such a shocking effect. And after this time it was basically all used up. The road from now on could only rely on one's own efforts and luck. Mo Qinji sat in the middle and said softly, experts of saint level and above can stay. The rest can go and patrol the defense of the army, and prevent any sneak attacks from the enemy. This sentence made the crowd in the big tent shrink by a large amount. There were only a total of 40 to 50 people left. Brother Jia Mo Qingwu Zi Sheqing Tan Tan Chula Mo Lei are the painting and calligraphy kings, the two great guards of Demon Emperor Tian, all saint-level experts. Even Yao Taiyao and Yao Ningning were chased out. Other than them, there were Mu Zonglan, Meng Wuya and the other experts who were originally part of Mo Yuntian's army, as well as Xie Danxiong's Heavenly Armament Pavilion experts. This group of people made up 25 people. There were a total of 40 people present. Of course there was also a hidden expert. That was the trump card that Chu Yang and Mo Tianji had agreed on, the Divine Spirit of Calamity. Today we have to decide on a huge strategy, and that is to force out Yuan Tianji's heavenly demon real body and completely kill him here. Mo Tianji's first words had given everyone a fright. Although the rebellion was already an indisputable fact, and there was no turning back, everyone also dreamed of killing Yuan Tianjia. However, everyone knew in their hearts that at most, they could only drive him away. It was really very difficult to truly kill him. But now, this ruthless person from the Tianji Intelligence Department actually directly said to kill him. There was no pretense at all. It was just that in the current situation, surrounded by tens of millions of enemy troops, how could they completely kill Yuan Tianjia? This problem was so difficult that it was almost impossible to solve. The attack of public opinion outside has basically reached its peak. It's meaningless to forcefully increase the attack. Mo Tianji was silent for a while and said, the so-called public opinion can only cause so much effect. Although most of the ordinary soldiers in the enemy army have started to waver, the higher-ups still have the power. So, it's not to the point where a mutiny can happen. So, the battle between the two armies still has to continue. So, there's no need to have any wishful thinking. This is still a tough battle. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.